What's everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto fought Goku for control of the cosmos? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. Space. Many people have wished throughout the centuries to journey into the great beyond to learn what was out there and to seek out new life forms. Until recent years it wasn't possible, and now that it was, there are hundreds of extraterrestrial life forms that had been found all over the universe, some even being identical to humans. And yet through all their explorations into space they had just barely begun to uncover even a quadrant of deep space. Humans had yet to even leave the western quadrant of space ruled by one of the four Kais, King Kai. They had really yet to leave the galaxies surrounding their own and explore planets like Namek, which used to exist before Frieza blew it up after feeling threatened by Goku. Yet all of this really didn't matter to Goku, who was currently flying in a Saiyan pod with the location of Earth programmed into it. It must have been Vegeta's pod now that he thought about it. Why else would Earth be in the programming? Oh well. Goku stretched while within the craft, being a little cramped as he did so. At least I got to stretch my legs and learn a new technique at that planet. And food. That food was so good. Just thinking about it, salivating at the thought of food, a little drool escaping his lips. Goku was already feeling hungry, and in all fairness he hadn't eaten in over a week or two, so that was natural. His body was burning the excess calories he had from the massive amount of food he devoured on the last planet he had visited. Man, I'm so hungry, Goku complained as he restlessly shifted in his seat, his thought process firmly on the subject of his empty stomach. I really wish I didn't use up all those senzu beans on the way to Namek. I'm hungry now. He finalized his statement by stamping his foot onto the pod. However, he forgot to calculate in his massive strength and the durability of the pod. To his luck, he didn't puncture through the space pod and instead just caused a massive malfunction as electricity started to crackle all around the ship. Oh, that's not good. Better land. Searching through space, hoping to see a planet in the distance, Goku sighed in relief seeing one. He didn't once wonder if the planet could support life in the slightest and set the coordinates. Somehow, with all the malfunctioning circuits, it managed to accept the directions and sped towards the nearby planet, set on a crash course. Getting a closer look at the planet, Goku was absolutely giddy. It was a planet very much like Earth at first sight. There were land masses, oceans and even Arctic poles. One could think it was Earth, but there were few large continents like there was one Earth, and instead there were hundreds if not thousands of islands spread throughout the oceans that circled around one larger continent. However, once more none of this mattered to Goku. He was just giddy for the fact if there was water that meant fish. And fish meant, well, at least I'll get some food when I land. I'm going to catch the biggest fish I can find when I land. Goku happily squealed as he entered the planet's orbit, glad that his hunger would soon be sated. For now, things had not gone well for Uzumaki Naruto today. Scratch that, they hadn't gone well for him this week. Everything started with getting the notice that they would be competing in the Chunin exams the day before they started. A little heads up would have been nice. Then during the exams, the first test was a written one. And Naruto hated written tests, but to make all things worse, it wasn't until after the test that he was informed it was about espionage and the fact that he had one of the Chunin guys next to him that had the answers. Come on. Next was the second exam in the Forest of Death. Where to start? That forest was a nightmare with everything that happened, for there were just too many things that went wrong. First, that rain guy ambushed him while taking piss. Then getting ambushed by that creepy snake guy and being blown over 100 meters by his wind blast and then eaten by a snake. Then Sasuke turns into a wimp and he had to set him straight, gets knocked out, and Kyuubi sealed off creepy snake guy before the sound team attacks them while he and Sasuke are unconscious and being defended by Sakura. How she managed to fight all three off after Lee got put out of commission even he didn't know. Then that entire saga with Kabuto, who he couldn't believe was that weak but already had the necessary scrolls to get to the next round, followed by those damn Haze clone rain ninja that were making fools out of him until Sasuke forced his Sharingan active, despite the pain, to help him beat them. The prelims were the first good thing that happened, for he beat Kiba with the help of a fart in his face. Now that he thought about it, that really sucked that he couldn't beat Kiba without that fart happening. And now finally, Kakashi said he couldn't train him during the month, for he would be training Sasuke to fight Gaara. Okay, fair enough. That guy was scary after he pummeled Lee like he did and was ready to kill the bushy eyebrow kid, but did he have to stick him with an incompetent teacher like Ebisu? He managed to lose the Junin after 10 minutes and now he was training on his own. Like losing him was hard in the first place. He outtrained Junins and the Anbu alike the day he painted the Hokage monument. He just couldn't get away from Iruka, for he knew all his favorite hiding spots. But now he came to a new problem. How in the hell was he supposed to train himself for the next month if he didn't know what to work on? Sure, he created techniques of his own just from seeing others, but it just wasn't the same. Besides, Kakashi had always said he needed to work on chakra control. So how did he do that? Of course there was the library and the scrolls he had at home, but he hated reading. Also, if he didn't understand something from it, he couldn't just ask someone how it worked, for there was no one there to ask. It was just better to have someone overseeing his training in the first place. Groaning out loud, just wondering how he was going to be able to pull this off, Naruto sighed as he ignored a rising roar in the distance. I guess I do need Ebisu. Even if he can't even train Konohamaru, at least he'll know how to work on chakra control. I hope. Since it was the last thing he wanted to do, Naruto gave the biggest tree he was next to a look and remembered the tree climbing exercise his team was taught in the Wave Country. He really didn't want to go back and look for Ebisu just yet, so it was better if he did something he knew of first. Getting a head start, he dashed up the tree before he noticed something was off about this. His chakra flow did not feel like it had been when he first was able to perform this exercise on a daily basis, and since it wasn't right, he wasn't able to keep his footing and slid back down. Damn, Naruto cursed at this inconvenience, but his eyes narrowed. What the hell did that creepy snake guy do? Not only did he seal off the Kyuubi from helping me, I can't even do this right anymore. His hatred grew for that snake bastard. That was just one more reason he had to beat the crap out of him the next time they met. After a few more attempts, he realized he wasn't getting anywhere, for his chakra kept acting up. He knew whatever it was that happened had to be fixed. The only person he knew that could fix whatever that snake did, other than Kakashi, was the old man Hokage. So it looked like he would have to make a visit to the old man soon. Great. He's not going to be too happy with me, especially after my last prank on him. Naruto grimaced, for he remembered pranking the Hokage just at the beginning of the week before he smirked. Then again, the old man loved every second of it. Harem no Jutsu probably just reminded him of the good old days. And what is that sound? Naruto finally noticed the loud roar that had been getting steadily louder and louder for the last couple of minutes. Looking around his area, expecting to see a cougar or something like that in the area, he saw nothing and began to wonder what in the world was causing such a sound. That was when he finally decided to look up and notice something rather dreadful coming his direction. Meteor. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Running, running, running. Naruto screamed out as he took off, trying to avoid being blown into smithereens by the falling object of impending doom. Little did he know a very similar mantra was being yelled by a certain Saiyan. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Don't crash, don't crash, don't crash. Neither mantra did much to help either out, as the spaceship crashed into the forests with a huge impact, narrowly missing Naruto, but instead lifted him into the air from the impact and flung him to the side and through a few trees in the process. Electricity surged around the pod as the hatch struggled to open before finally just stopping. Seeing there was no way else out, Goku forced the door open and practically ripped it off its hinges. Whoops, this is going to be a problem. Hope someone on this planet knows how to fix this, otherwise I might be in trouble. Hey, wait a second, Goku realized before putting his hand on his head and started concentrating, searching for a presence. Hey King Kai, I need a little help here. Goku, what did you do now? The frustrated voice of King Kai spoke within his mind, having caught Goku was in some sort of trouble. Don't tell me you crash-landed again. What am I going to do with you? Wincing from King Kai's annoyed tone, Goku could only nod before responding. Yeah, could you communicate to Bulma or someone back home that I'm stuck on a planet only a few galaxies away and I need a ship sent here to take me home? I kind of broke the pod. Oh, for the love. Alright, fine, but you owe me big time. The North Kai responded, sounding even more agitated at first before he simply sighed, knowing there was no way to get around it. Goku was one hell of a fighter. But he was dense in every other sense and happened to be very accident-prone. Thanks King Kai, Goku responded before smiling as he looked around. Alright, now time to get some food and maybe check out the locals. Oh, this is the worst pain ever. A groan nearby caught Goku's attention. Quickly locking onto the location of where the groan came from, Goku grimaced, seeing a few broken trees where it looked like someone was flung through them. Then he saw a rather young boy, almost twice Gohan's age from the look of it, in rather bad condition. Landing next to him, Goku refrained from groaning as he was sure this was his fault. The boy probably tried to get out of the way of his spaceship but got caught in the aftershock of his landing and got thrown here. Man, I don't even have a sensu. Wait, what's this in my shoe? Hey, a sensu, why was I keeping it there? Goku wondered as he pulled off his boot from his elaborate outfit he got from the last planet he crashed on, only to see one of the magical beans fall from his shoe. Oh well, doesn't matter. Here, eat up. It will make you feel good as new. At this point, Naruto really didn't care what the guy was offering. He was pretty sure his spine was broken along with many other bones in the process. It was just luck that he survived the meteor crash and having this guy find him so quickly. And if whatever this was could take away his pain. He chewed the bean and swallowed. Then something he never felt in his life filled his very being like nothing before. Naruto felt his very body reacting to what he had swallowed. His broken bones mending in record times, his bruises mystically washing away, and all the pain that he was in moments before began to vanish in moments. And the weirdest thing of all was he felt somewhat full. Like he just ate a few bowls of Ichiraku's ramen. Slowly sitting up, his eyes wide at the magical healing powers of whatever that was that he swallowed, he looked at the man in shock. What was that? I never felt so good in my life. That's a sensu bean for you. It heals all minor damage done to the body and even fills up your stomach for a few days. Though it hardly fills my appetite anymore. Goku responded, grinning widely at the young blonde's amazement of his healed body. And sorry about that, I couldn't control my ship as it crashed down. Oh, that's okay. Wait, what? Naruto brushed him off like nothing happened before he caught what he said. Your ship? You mean that meteor was you? Ah, alien. Hey, take it easy. Goku tried to placate the young boy, understanding why someone would freak out from an alien landing on their planet. I was on my way back home when my pod started acting funny and I had to land. Things got out of hand and I crash landed here. I've already called my friends, so they should be here soon to pick me up. About that, Goku. King Kai's voice came from within his head, catching the Super Saiyan's attention. It will take them about a month to get there. Thankfully they have a ship ready to launch, but you're a bit further than what you expected. They should be there in about 3 weeks or so to pick you up. I had to give them the coordinates for it as a planet the Earthlings haven't visited yet. Oh, is that so? Oh well, I'll just train while I wait for them to get here. Thanks again, King Kai. Goku shrugged that off easily, for he could wait that long for his friends to pick him up. Don't mention it, but just for the sake of things, Goku, the planet you are on has some of the warriors I've trained in the past. However, they have a weird way of using Kai. Instead of letting it flow freely, they have found a way to control it to use more subtle techniques. It is quite fascinating actually how they're able to do it, but it weakens them tremendously compared to other fighters out there. King Kai decided to inform Goku since he would be staying there for a month. Really? Huh, I might be able to learn a few things while I'm here then. Good to know, King Kai. Talk to you later. Goku mentally waved off the Northern Kai before noticing the blonde-haired kid was looking at him funny. What? You zoned out for a moment and looked like you were off in deep space. Now as I asked, where are you from and why were you away from home? Naruto responded before asking the question Goku had zoned out on. Oh, sorry about that. I was. Never mind. Goku scratched the back of his head before thinking about Naruto's question for a moment. I'm from Earth, a few galaxies away from here. I was coming back home after saving my friends from a space overlord that was trying to get immortality with an amazing power level. I've never fought anyone so strong before. Wait, you're a fighter? Naruto caught what the guy was saying before his mind started working a mile a minute. Can you train me then? Naruto wasn't sure why he asked, but something about the man before him screamed to him. He wasn't sure what, but he could feel that this guy could train him and make him stronger than he ever imagined, helping him not only beat Neji but prove to everyone that he was Uzumaki Naruto, the next Hokage. Deciding to explain things a little further, Naruto excitedly kept on going. There is a tournament in about a month that I have to get ready for, but I have no one to train me thanks to my sensei training Sasuke, who is also part of my team, for he has a scary opponent in the next round. He assigned someone to train me, but I'm stronger than that guy anyways, so. Sure. Goku grinned at the prospect of having someone to spar with while he was on this planet, for it would be a great way to kill time. I've got nothing better to do while I'm here, but first, I'm hungry. Is there any place to eat? Yata. Naruto yelled out happily that he would have a competent trainer for the next month before he caught what Goku had said. Sure, I'll take you to the Ichiraku's ramen. What the? Goku tensed and prepared for battle as he could feel hundreds surround their location swiftly. In the very next moment, dozens of Anbu, Junin and Chunin quickly had surrounded the area. They were probably all from the same town the kid was, so there probably was nothing to worry about, but despite that fact everyone seemed tensed and combat ready, so he was ready to fight if he had to. Hey, old man, what are you doing here? Naruto suddenly yelled out, recognizing the aged figure who was leading the group of ninja that suddenly arrived. I was just about to take my friend here to go get something to eat before he started training me. Blinking at what was just said, the Sandaime Hokage wanted to roll his eyes. He really did. However, from the meteor crash, something that was not very normal within Konoha, to the massive power he felt emanating from it, and now from the man next to the said blonde, the third had to be careful. Everyone was tense and ready to deal with the threat, for this power felt like nothing they had ever sensed before, dwarfing Kyuubi with relative ease. Taking a deep breath, Izorin gazed upon the blonde in a serious manner to try and inform Naruto of the severity of the situation that was at hand. Naruto, can you kindly explain to me what you know? That would help greatly at this time, for you see we came here expecting the worst. Huh? Naruto seemed a little confused at what the old Hokage meant by expect the worst, but he understood that he wanted to know what happened. Well, let's see. I was out here training after Kakashi abandoned me with Ebisu and I shook off the perv. I was about to head out when suddenly out of nowhere this meteor fell out of the sky, which happened to be a spaceship owned by. The name's Goku. Goku added to try and help Naruto in his cause by explaining what he could, while noting the shocked-looking faces on those in the area, despite there was evidence of such, for his pod was still intact. Thanks. Well, when I noticed I tried to run off, but it was just too fast and I got caught up in the crash and was badly hurt. Naruto grimaced, as this part would be rather hard to explain, for he was no longer even scratched from the crash. Goku here noticed me rather quickly and noted I was hurt and gave me this weird pill that healed all my injuries. Afterwards, he healed you? With a pill? Izorin raised an eyebrow, as did many shinobi and kunoichi in the vicinity, before turning to the Saiyan. Would you be so kind to show me what it was that you healed Naruto here with? About that. Goku nervously grinned as he scratched the back of his head. That was my last one. I didn't even know I had a sensu left, and it was by chance I still had one. Don't know how it got there, as these are new clothes I'm wearing, unless the bean was in between my toes this entire time. Wait, it was in between your toes. Ew. Naruto wanted to puke, for he knew a little more about hygiene than people gave him credit for, and knew that was a rather disgusting place for anything to be. Not entirely believing the story that was at hand, knowing Naruto was rather easy to convince, the third Hokage refrained from acting hastily on this situation, for it all could be just a massive misunderstanding. First thing first, confirming his story. There was a weird pod he noted on the way here. Naruto was training here. He was watching the blonde through his crystal ball before he felt this man's massive power nearing at an accelerated pace. He indeed crashed. From what he had seen of the pod, it wasn't in the best condition. Finally, he probably did heal Naruto, for he was very sure Naruto's clothes weren't that torn up when he was watching him train just a little before. But the elderly Hokage was no fool either. This could just as easily be a ploy by one of the other nations that now had access to greater technology. But to have someone of this kind of power, why was he not known about? Going by his gut instinct, the third kept his gaze on the weirdly dressed man. Mr. Goku, was it? How was it that you ended up here? Seeing it was his turn to tell his part of the story, Goku wisely decided to answer. Well, sir, I was on my way back home after trying to save one of my friend's home planet from an evil tyrant. Now I'm on my way back after settling everything, and I kind of wrecked my pod. So I had to call my friends to come pick me up, for there is no way for me to get there on my own unless you have ships here that can transverse a few galaxies, or know someone would can fix my ship. I would be grateful. Once again, it was a hard story to swallow. Naruto probably would believe it, for he could see the good in anyone's heart if it was there, but there was nothing to say that this guy wasn't the tyrant in the story with that horrible power he felt emanating from him. However, he also sensed about him the same calm he was sure Naruto felt as well. It was like he was before a mother bear, yet he was nothing but a cub to the man before him. Yet if someone reared their teeth towards him and brought out the violence. I see. The third Hokage spoke, choosing his words wisely with this new possible threat before him. The elderly man gazed over at Naruto for only a moment. We have no one that I know of that can fix your ship or have any of our own. I can safely assume our planet is not as advanced as your own. How long will it be till they are able to retrieve you? They said in about 3 weeks to a month. But now hearing Naruto's problem, I think I'll stay the month and help him train. I hear there's a fighting tournament coming up here and I want to see it, having won my planet's Tenkaichi Budokai a few years ago. I want to see how it turns out, for I like watching fights. Well, I enjoy being in them more, but I have a feeling it's more for the kids here. Goku responded before chuckling softly and scratching the back of his head. Thankfully this being spoke in the same language, and it seemed that they also used a similar language for certain events and was able to translate what he had said. That only gave this man more credence to being a possible threat, a very dangerous one at that, for they had no clue how powerful his people were. Still, he did not want to be the one to bring forth this one's anger and bring possible destruction to his village if he could avoid it. Very well then. For the time being I will allow you free stay here till they arrive to pick you up, and for the tournament, I will have someone take you to your room after you finish with your training today. Then, a loud roar echoed before Goku could even finish, and in classic style Goku laughed. Sorry, I'm starving. If you don't mind, I would like to get something to eat, and Naruto here was about to show me to a place to eat, so I'll pick up the tab after. Just keep under a 5-bowl minimum, Naruto. The third spoke, still leery about this entire situation, but he wasn't going to press it if this being wasn't threatening to use force. Anything to stay on his good side for now. For the Sandaime Hokage seriously doubted his ability in sealing if they were forced to fight this one whose power seemingly overwhelmed anything he ever dreamed of. Not even the fox seemed to match a fraction of his power. Thanks, old man, Naruto cried back before grabbing Goku's hand and drug him to his favorite restaurant. You're going to love it. Their ramen is the best in all of Konoha, and it is perfect food for training since it peps you up. You don't have to sell me. I love ramen. Goku responded happily, almost lifting Naruto in anticipation of being fed, and hurried Naruto along, for he was starving. Soon after the two faded from sight, the head of Anbu cloaked in a creamy white cloak dropped next to the third Hokage. Sir, is this really wise? We have no choice in the matter. I'm sure you felt it too. The power he radiates, Izoran told the Anbu while keeping his eyes firmly on where the two had left. And to be honest, I don't think he is a threat, so we will show him our hospitality, for this seems to be pure happenstance. And as long as we don't make him bare his teeth, we should be fine. The white cloak Anbu nodded, for he knew all too well what would happen if the alien being were to attack. Keep an eye on them. While I will trust him and give our hospitality to him, I do not want him out of sight. Who knows what could possibly happen, or if he's really benevolent as he seems. There is just too many variables, with the only sure factor is his power. And above all else, the third hesitated for a moment as he chose his words carefully. This village safety comes first, and if we have to, sacrifices will be made. The Anbu bowed lightly before dispersing from sight to trail the alien being in Konoha's sunshine, leaving the third and many other perplexed ninja with cleanup. Tucci could not believe his eyes. The sight before him was almost horrific, and would have been if it wasn't for one thing. He was getting paid for the amount this man was wolfing down. Tears of joy rolled down his face as he served what had to be the 100th bowl to Goku, who almost devoured it the moment it was put in front of him. Tucci couldn't be happier. Sure, they were practically out of materials, but that didn't matter, for the amount they would make up for all that was lost by fourfold. To the side, spectators had gathered in shock to witness this feat. Most were people Naruto didn't know, but there were those that he did, and he couldn't help but join them. Sure, he could eat 20 bowls on a good day, but damn. This was his 137th bowls, and he was still going strong. Even Choji, Ino and Shikamaru couldn't believe what they were seeing, and they had seen Shuza on an eating binge, and that didn't even compare to this. Where did all those calories go? More please. Goku grinned and spun the bowl he just finished on his finger. Any flavor, doesn't matter, just keep 'em coming. I'm sorry sir, but we're all out. Ayame begun for her father, who looked like he was determined to run out and get more materials just to keep this man at the booth. We can get more materials, but that won't be until tomorrow afternoon, as we have to assign a mission in order to get the materials. Looking somewhat disappointed at hearing they were out, Goku suddenly got a pensive look on his face before the light bulb came on above his head. So, if I go and get these materials for you, I could say, continue eating? Ayame was flabbergasted. This guy had just ate about his weight in ramen and was still wanting more, and was even offering to get the materials just to keep eating. I believe so, but you don't even know where. Alright, it's settled. Goku jumped up with a look of determination on his face before he turned to his current protege. Let's go Naruto. We've got a job to do. I'm right behind you on this one. We'll get you your supplies Ayame. You better believe it. Naruto grinned and gave her a quick victory pose, for he polished 17 bowls off, forgetting what the Hokage had limited him to after watching Goku ripping through the delicious noodles. The two were ready to run off and get the ingredients that were needed when they were stopped by the father of the pineapple genius. Hey, you two do know that before you can just run off you have to clear it with the Hokage, right? What Mr. Shikamaru's dad? Naruto stopped in his tracks before turning with Goku and seeing Shikaku looking at them with a passive glare. Raising his eyebrow at Naruto, wondering how long it was going to take him to remember his name since he spent the night over at their place a multitude of times, Shikaku sighed. Go clear it with the Hokage first. I'm sure he'll allow it, for it is a mission and it is only C rank. He'll also be able to give you 2 directions, for it doesn't seem like you know where to go or what to pick up. Oh, good point, Goku sheepishly admitted while scratching the back of his neck. Alright, let's get the directions first and then let's be on our way. Now who's the Hokage and where can I find him? Every spectator, including those that were there at Goku's crash site, and even they sweat dropped, found their faces in the ground. This guy was in Konoha and didn't even know who the Hokage was? And at that he didn't even know where to find him. Everyone knew that. Was he an idiot or just really dense? The old man we were talking to a little while ago. Come on, he's in the big tower over there. Naruto reminded the Saiyan warrior before motioning to the tallest building in Konoha. Now let's go and get ourselves a mission. Alright, I'm with you. Goku stated and followed after Naruto in a hasty manner to the Hokage's office, keen on getting the mission to help Ichiraku's. For the sake of food. A certain head of Anbu picked himself from the rooftop he fell onto and twitched behind his mask. This was going to be a rough month. He needed help, that was for sure. Hiruzen could only blink. It had barely been an hour and already there seemed to be a problem, and it dealt with the alien visitor. And no, it couldn't have been an orthodox problem. It had to be something that you normally wouldn't expect. The only bright side, it wasn't something difficult to deal with. Just annoying. So let me get this straight, you two. Hiruzen twitched while he gazed at the 2 ravenous ramen eaters before him. You managed to eat Ichiraku's out of their ingredients, forgetting my 5 bowl limit for you Naruto, and you didn't think about stopping him after about 50 bowls. And now you want to go out on a mission to restock their supplies so you can eat more? Yeah, that about does it. Naruto admitted without shame while nodding enthusiastically. So how about it, old man? Going to give us the mission? If you don't, Ayame will be sad and that will put me in a pranking mood. Sarutobi couldn't help but roll his eyes at Naruto's attempt at blackmail and would have attempted to ignore his threat if it was so imminent. Naruto was about the only person that could get the upper hold on him within the village. All due to a certain smut writer's work of art. Sighing, trying to intimidate Naruto with his half-effort glare, the third gave up and nearly threw his hands in the air. Fine. It just so happens this is normally a once-a-week mission, so I have all the information necessary on me. Pulling out a scroll, checking once to make sure it was the correct parchment, Hiruzen tossed it to Naruto and was about to send them off before he realized who he was talking to. Head to the town of Dao to the south of here, a few miles down the road. You can't miss it. In the town you will find a man by the name of Reno. The scroll is the payment for the supplies. Alright, we're on it, old man. We'll be back in a flash. Naruto pocketed the scroll in his equipment bag and had almost ran out of the room with Goku before skidding to stop. Feeling stupid that he forgot all about what the snake bastard had done to him, he quickly jogged back to the Hokage. Hey old man, before I go, Something happened to me in the forest during the second exam. Hirizen's attention focused solely on Naruto and his already serious demeanor stiffened even more. The last thing he needed to hear was that Orochimaru did something more than place his cursed mark upon Sasuke. The fact that he also did something to Naruto disturbed him, and he prayed beyond all hope that it was nothing similar. "Can you elaborate more on that, Naruto?" the third asked in his usual caring tone with Naruto, for it wouldn't do to show his worry to the boy. "I'm aware about what happened and your run-in with Orochimaru. I must say you are all lucky to still be alive. He isn't the most merciful when it comes to someone getting in the way of his goals." Behind Naruto, stopping his jogging in place, Goku's face straightened. Just from the feeling he got from the elderly man when he spoke of this, Orochimaru gave him the impression that this guy was a Frieza in the making. And that in itself was not good. He would have to learn a little more later on and see what he could do. Instead of feeling any fear about what could have happened, Naruto did something that somewhat surprised the third Hokage and even Goku. He smirked. "Then he's going to live to regret leaving me alive, for I am the next Hokage, old man, and will become stronger than anyone before or after me." Both Goku and Hiruzen froze at a feeling washed over them, while many others probably would have been able to put the feeling to the side. Neither of them could. They were excellent at sensing one's untapped potential, and they both saw it. They could see the massive power that lay dormant within Naruto that just waited to be released. Letting the shock was over him for a moment after the feeling faded, a low chuckle filled the air before the elderly Hokage shook his head. "Of course you are Naruto. Above all else, I'm sure that you will achieve your dreams. But now can we get to why you stopped? What happened?" "Oh yeah." Naruto snapped his fingers, almost having forgotten about why it was that he stopped. "He did something weird to the... He hit me in the stomach and sealed it off. I can't feel its presence anymore." While most would panic at hearing that Naruto could feel Kyuubi's presence within him any longer, a frightening thought, the third knew better, and he knew his former pupil well. "Take off your jacket and raise your shirt and I'll examine what happened." Naruto did as he said while Hiruzen got up from his seat and knelt for the blonde, gazing at the blonde for a moment, seeing the seal flicker to life after he placed his hand on Naruto's stomach, flowing chakra into it. Hiruzen immediately saw what the problem was. Orochimaru had been sloppy and had not sealed Kyuubi off completely, just its presence and a little of the demon's chakra. By doing that, it affected Naruto's chakra and his control of it, drastically weakening him. "Ah, I see. Thankfully it is a rather simple containment seal. If it was anything serious I would have to call Jiraiya, but I can handle this. Brace yourself. This is going to hurt a little, but it will fix the problem." The third pulled his hand back while gathering chakra on his fingertips. In the next second, the said fingers impacted his stomach at the exact points of the five-pronged seal that had cut off the Kyuubi's connection with Naruto. That hurt old." Naruto's words died on his lips as his chakra nearly exploded around him in a fiery display, and he gazed at his own hands, seeing the energy flow around his being. Whoa! Even the third was slightly surprised at what he saw. Naruto always had a ton of chakra, but this was different. It seemed more focused yet uncontrolled than it ever had been before. At first he thought that whatever the snake had done had thrown Naruto back to square one, where he wouldn't even be able to complete the tree climbing exercise with practice again. But that was when he saw it. It was almost unnoticeable to the normal eyes, but his eyes were well trained. When Naruto's chakra burst around him, he noted that his muscles slightly tightened and bulged. It was very minute changed that only a Hyuga or someone close to Naruto would be able to notice. If he didn't know better, he swore that what Orochimaru had done had strengthened Naruto instead of crippling him. That thought only brought a smirk to his lips. Oh, he would love to throw that in his old apprentice's face. Goku too was impressed at the show before him. He would have said Naruto was about as strong as Krillin when they first started training with Master Roshi. But now, after seeing this explosion, he could compare Naruto more to himself during his adventures dealing with the Red Ribbon Army. But there was also something else he noted. Something that felt weird with Naruto's Kai. Remembering what King Kai had told him earlier about how they refined their Kai to perform their techniques, Goku frowned. It truly did make them weaker, but there is something else that seemed to be mixed in with the Kai. Something that didn't quite go with it. I'll ask King Kai about it tonight. He said he did train some of the warriors of this planet before, maybe he'll know something. Goku made a mental note to see what he could do to help Naruto train after he saw what could do. Also, I need to know more about that seal. There's something foreboding emanating from within it. Finally, as the chakra faded around him, the third couldn't help but chuckle yet again at the blonde. Well, it just seems you are full of surprises, Naruto. But you better work on your chakra control. It seems that Orochimaru threw it out of whack with that seal. Yeah, I kind of noticed. My chakra just suddenly welled up and expanded on its own there. Naruto was still a little shocked at what happened, for he felt far better than he did before, and to make matters weirder, he just felt stronger. Coughing to knock Naruto back to his senses, the third smiled before motioning for the door. Now I believe you have a mission to complete. Otherwise Ayame might be very sad that they have to close up shop for the next few days. Oh right, let's get to Dao and talk to Rino about the supplies. Naruto suddenly jumped back into reality before rushing out the door with Goku following. The moment they left, Sarutobi simply looked at the corner of his room before the Anbu captain silently followed the two. In the next moment, another person made his presence known and made the Hokage sigh. So what do you think? Well, I don't know, the man responded and shrugged his shoulders. It is obvious he's not from this world, so we can't make any hasty judgments. However, I would have to say he's not a bad person. The only thing I would have to say is his reaction to Orochimaru when you mentioned him. I caught that too. Now I just wonder what it was about, for his power slightly rose for a moment. The third responded with a frown adorned on his face. While I don't buy his tyrant story. Maybe it was the truth, and just from my brief description of Orochimaru it reminded him of that tyrant. You can't rule it out. I don't see why he would lie. It doesn't benefit him, and with the power he has. If he was truly an evil overlord. Why make us believe differently? Why not just annihilate us and wait for his minions to come and pick him up? Why train one of our own? The other man rose valid points to the third. The Hokage could only nod at them before sighing. True, but you are more trusting than I am, Jiraiya. Just like Naruto, you can see the good in a person within their heart. And it has only failed me once. Jiraiya pointed out before frowning at the thought of his ex-teammate. So it would seem that we're going to let him train Naruto over the month to see what he has to offer and to see if he's a threat. That is how it must be. Hiruzen sadly admitted before gazing down at the village and at a certain pair as they moved to the south gate. But I hope beyond all hope that nothing goes wrong. I wouldn't want to explain what happened to Minato and Kushina in the afterlife. You and me both, sensei. Jiraiya cringed as he knew what both would do to him if they learned he let anything bad happen to Naruto, and he didn't even bother to save him. 1,000 years of death with the Rasengan was the least of his problems. What Kushina could do to him made him shiver. That woman had a violent streak in her that made the Kyuubi cringe in fear. Hold on, Naruto cried out to Goku, trying to follow after him once they left the town. He found it incredibly difficult to chase after the Saiyan by foot. He thought Kakashi was hard to keep up with during their training exercises. This guy made Kakashi look like he was going in slow motion. Goku knew he was easily outpacing Naruto. He was testing how fast he was, and his guess was right. He was just as fast as he was while he dealt with the Red Ribbon Army, maybe a little slower. Speed didn't seem to be one of Naruto's strong suits, but that was okay. To be honest, he was still young, and from his guess he had only just started to train. And that was impressive to Goku. He had been training all his life, and while he was sure Naruto trained a little since he could walk, it probably wasn't too serious. To start off at this level of strength was quite amazing, for he knew that on Earth that most martial artists dreamed of getting to that level, for it was enough to compete in the Tenkaichi Budokai. Slowing down to match his speed, Goku sheepishly smiled at Naruto. Sorry about that, but I was testing how fast you were to see what we're going to have to work on after the mission. Oh, cool. Naruto at first was a little peeved before it clicked in his head that they would be training to increase his speed. Naruto had always thought he was rather slow. Sasuke by far was faster, and even though he hated to admit it, Sakura was actually faster than he was. Then again, that was about the only she was better than him in, other than just being smarter and devilishly beautiful. Kicking out the fantasies of Sakura that jumped into his mind, Naruto focused more onto his eventual training with Goku. Okay, so then are we going to get some weights like Lee has or something like that? That's a good start, but I still have to see what else you can do. Goku mentioned sensing the town ahead and started to slow his pace to try and blend in once they arrived. Oh, before we're there, what was that seal on your stomach? I noticed that the Hokage did something to it, but I wasn't sure what. Could you explain, because I'm kind of new here and don't know anything about this planet? Goku had to suddenly stop as Naruto skidded to a halt. The look on his face made the Saiyan warrior wonder what he had said to offend him when Naruto spoke. I rather not speak about it. It isn't something I like to talk about. His voice almost made Goku think twice about asking. He was just curious, but to get that kind of reaction meant it had to be something bad. And now noting a stranger presence and power fluctuating within the blonde before him made him wonder even more. Does that have to deal with that second and more foreboding presence I sense within you? Naruto jumped back at this startling revelation. His new sensei could sense the fox within him? He wasn't sure that he was impressed at this skill or worried about it, for now he would have to explain. And he really didn't want to say anything, because what if it changed his mind about training him? He would be left with nothing again if he saw him like so many villagers did. And maybe even less, because it would be such a blow to learn that it wasn't just those that lived through the Kyuubi attack that feared him for containing the beast. That would be a crippling blow indeed. Sucking in a deep breath and exhaling, Naruto brought forth his courage and decided to tell his hopeful trainer about the fox demon. 13 years ago, a demon of great power attacked our village and we were unable to do anything about it. His power was just too great for even the fourth Hokage, the strongest of our village. Killing the beast was impossible, and even defeating him looked bleak. But then our Yondaime, Namikaze Minato, came up with a way to defeat the nine-tailed demon. But in order to do so, he had to sacrifice his life and the life of a newborn child that the beast would be sealed within. With the technique, he succeeded in defeating the beast by sealing it within the child, who was then burdened with the demon that killed so many of the village. Naruto told the story with sadness, as it was hard not to see the results with his own eyes. And that child was you. Goku spoke, for he realized how the story was going to end. I can't say I understand what it was like for you, but it must have been a hard life for you. But hey, you know what? You made it through it, and that makes you even stronger for it. Goku smiled at Naruto, catching him off guard as he ruffled the blonde's hair. Having a strong body is only part of the equation. If you don't have a strong mind or a will to use it, having power is meaningless. And it also seems that you know what is most important too. Huh? Naruto was even more confused than before, trying to understand what Goku was saying. The Saiyan's smile only brightened at Naruto as when he ruffled his hair he took a quick peek at his life. That in the end you are willing to lay down everything you have for your friends, even your life. Only those that are willing to give up everything for what they care for truly become strong. To say Naruto was surprised would be an understatement. He was utterly baffled at what Goku had said, for it was so much like what Haku had said. And how he had begun to live his life. And this man seemingly lived by that philosophy for his entire life, and the moment he felt his touch leave him, he could feel the storm of power that lay within. And he knew that power was meant only for those that threatened what Goku held dearest to him. More than ever before, he wanted to be trained by this man. Not just for how strong he was and to learn some really cool and badass techniques from. No, he wanted to learn from this man that lived the life that he had started to travel. He wanted to become just like Goku and fight for what was precious to him. HMPH, the demon is out of Konoha? A voice chuckled not too far away, noticing Naruto, and another approached Dao on a mission most likely. This could be interesting. I can finally get my revenge and prove my loyalty to my lord. Just you wait, demon. I'm coming for you. A dark laughter echoed as he began to set up a plan to get the boy alone so he could tear him down like he did to him. Geez whiz. There are so many people here. Which one could possibly be Reno? Goku wondered as he searched high and low, looking for where Reno could possibly be so they could get the supplies and get back to Konoha. He was getting hungrier by the second, and the longer he had to wait, the more restless he would become. Taking out a map, which was conveniently located in the scroll, Naruto scratched his head, for he wished there was a "You are located here" spot on the map. Luckily there were street names and the location of Reno's surplus was circled on the map, so finding the place would be a breeze. Theoretically anyways. Oh man, I think it is on the other side of town. Naruto groaned, reading the street name they just passed and then reading the map. Great, let's turn around. Oi Gaki. A somewhat familiar voice yelled out from behind Naruto, who in turn jumped and turned around to see a nightmare come true. "Ah, creepy exam lady." Naruto yelled and pointed at Anko, who in turn sweat dropped at the blonde. Then her embarrassment quickly turned into anger and she gripped Naruto by his coat's collar and started violently shaking him. "Brat, my name is Anko. Get it right. Now tell me what you were doing out of the village. Contestants to the third round aren't supposed to be let out of the village during the break." Excuse. Ma'am. Goku tried to coax the women, who Naruto obviously knew and who acted a little like Chi-Chi, to let go of Naruto. Hello. Could you let him go? What do you? Ow. Anko turned on Goku and started to yell at him before she let go of Naruto as he bit down onto her hand. "Why you? You're going to pay for that. If you weren't choking me I would have answered you, psycho." Naruto fired back, adjusting his coat collar back. "And for your information, we took a mission here to get the ingredients and some supplies for Ichiraku's ramen since they're out. We're just kind of lost, otherwise we'd be on our way back." Blinking for a moment, still pissed that the brat had bitten her hand, Anko gazed at the oddly dressed man that had tried to stop her from her usual antics when someone angered her. She had never seen him before, yet for some reason he was on this mission with Naruto. And it was unorthodox to put a genin that had made it to the finals of the Chunin exam on a mission, since they were supposed to be training on the same day the prelims had ended. None of it made sense to her. So she was going to figure out what was going on and why there were Anbu in the area. She was cleared to be here since she too had taken a similar mission for her dango stand. For she would do anything to keep them in stock with her favorite food in the universe. Little did she know that she was staring at a man from a different planet. "Brat, you do realize that Reno is on the other side of town, right?" Anko twitched at Naruto, noticing a map in his hand before she sighed. "I'll take you to him. It just happens that I'm out on a similar mission myself." "Really? Thank you." Naruto seemingly forgot that Anko had been threatening him moments before. "Yeah, don't mention it." Anko sighed and pocketed her hands into her trench coat. Leading them through the city, knowing the village well, they quickly found themselves before a man in a tux with a strange pair of sunglasses and spiky red hair that was tied into a ponytail. "Yo Anko, what took you? I was worried since you're here by 5 exact on Wednesday. And who's the kid and the funky dressed guy?" "It's the Chunin exams and I was a proctor. I couldn't just take time off to get the stuff." Anko shrugged since the village took priority over even her love for dango, which she hated at times. "And the kid is Naruto, a finalist in this year's exam. He's here for Tuchi's weekly payment." "The guy? I don't know. Who are you?" "The name is Son Goku." Goku responded with a happy smile now that they were in the spot now and could get what they needed. "Can you hurry and help fetch the ingredients for us? I'm still hungry." To punctuate his statement, his stomach roared loudly, leaving the other three to sweat drop, none greater than Naruto since he saw how much Goku had devoured. "Okay." Reno simply blinked before standing and opening the door behind him, leading them into a warehouse before pointing to a few haversacks on a 2-wheel oxen cart, which conveniently didn't have an ox. "Anko, I already have everything ready for Yura's delivery, so if you wouldn't mind waiting, I'll get Tuchi order." Waving him off, since it really didn't matter for her, Anko let Reno get the things, and in a few moments the cart was filled with both Tuchi's and Yura's orders, which Reno marked for them so they didn't get confused. "Well, there is this week's orders now, if you would, the payment please." Watching Anko take the money from the scroll and handing it to Reno, Naruto looked at his scroll for a moment and attempted to do the same thing. Failing horribly the first time, Anko sighed and rolled her eyes. "Kid, just apply some chakra to the seal. The money should come out." Naruto did as Anko said and was somewhat surprised when his other hand was filled with a large bulk of ryo before he handed it over to Reno, who looked surprised. Seeing there was a note as well, Naruto read it out loud. "Oh, the old man said to increase the size by tenfold for this month. Something about Goku eating them out of business with my help." A large bead of sweat fell from the back of both Anko's and Reno's head at this revelation and could only look at the toned man for a moment, wondering where all the calories went. The former could understand with Naruto since he was always so energetic from what she saw and burned a lot of it off. But neither understood Goku's reason. What was he, alien? After getting over his shock, Reno and a few helping hands brought everything over and completely filled the cart with the materials needed. Anko looked somewhat leery with the amount of weight and tested it herself before she grinned. Kid, today is your lucky day. You get to pull this back to Konoha. What? What about the ox? Naruto fired back at the thought of having to drag this all the way back. Sorry kid, we don't have an ox. Too much trouble to keep one around. That's why ninja are hired for this mission anyways. Most can lift loads like this and take them back to Konoha. Reno commented before hefting the cart up once on his own to show it wasn't so difficult. Besides Naruto, it is good training. Goku chimed in, thinking it was a great way to start Naruto's training. I did a lot of things like this, I'm sure you can get it done. Just think about how much stronger and faster you will get by carrying it all the way back to your village. Despite not seeing it as training, Naruto still was a little cautious about this. Still, if this was going to make him stronger, and his goal was to be Hokage, he couldn't possibly let someone else do this. Alright, I'll get this to Konoha in a heartbeat. Jogging over to the wooden handles in front, Naruto placed his hands underneath and using all his might, he hefted the cart up. Or tried to at least. Watching Naruto's face burn a bright red as he struggled to slowly pick the cart up, Goku felt a little sheepish for he could see how heavy it was. It was rather heavy for he saw the purple-haired woman, who he could tell was a lot stronger than Naruto, struggle lifting it with a decent effort. So just to help him Goku walked to the other end and with little effort, using only a finger, pushed that side of the cart down just enough to so that Naruto was holding it level. Are you ready Naruto? Oh man, this heavy. Naruto groaned as he gasped in effort just to keep it level. While Anko wanted to laugh at Naruto, for he looked hilarious, Anko's entire body tensed as she noticed what Goku had done. Now she would admit that she could manage this cart on the way back to Konoha, but it would take something out of her. It was far heavier than a normal load and was easily half a ton. And he had only used enough to push it up to help keep it level so that the weight wasn't entirely placed upon Naruto's shoulders. Anko narrowed her eyes at this development. Just who was this man? Lord Hokage. A Chunin with a scar across the bridge of his nose spoke, standing before the desk of the Hokage. Hiruzen took his attention for the papers he had slowly been working through to see the Chunin before him. Wondering why he was here, especially since the academy had just reopened this last month, the Hokage frowned. It couldn't be anything with Konohamaru as he would just go to the boy's mother instead. What is it Iruka? You seem troubled, the elderly Hokage stated after a closer glance at the dolphin named Chunin. Just from his demeanor he noticed that something was bothering Iruka yet he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Sir, what is this about a report that he escaped from prison? Iruka finally spoke, having waited for the Hokage to beckon him to do so as it was respectful. Along with that I heard you let Naruto out on a C-rank mission with a foreigner. I see. He's worried about Naruto's safety. Hiruzen caught the Chunin's thought process before he shook his head. Mizuki did indeed escape from jail earlier this week along with many other expect spies. From what our Anbu have been able to uncover it is easy to determine that it was an outside job. The problem is that we can't determine what the nationality of those that busted them out are since they covered their tracks well. And yes, I did let Naruto out on a mission with a guest of mine that will be staying here for the month. He's more than capable of taking care of Mizuki if he is to attempt anything against Naruto. Sarutobi tried to placate the Chunin teacher, who he could see was even more worried hearing both accounts were true. And to top it off Anko was sent out on a similar mission so there is no doubt she's traveling with them. So don't worry Iruka. With Anko and my guest there is nothing can happen to Naruto outside of physical exhaustion from carrying the materials back from Dao. Hiruzen finished before smiling kindly at Iruka. Hearing that, Iruka felt a little better. While he wasn't sure who this guest of the Hokages was he did know Anko very well and if she was with Naruto, he felt a little better. For no matter how good Mizuki got, Anko was simply better. Thank you Lord Hokage. I make my leave now and let you get back to work. You're welcome Iruka. Feel free to come to me anytime anything bothers you. The third added with a slightly brighter smile before he turned back to his papers, nearly finished with the last stack of the day. Walking out of the room, Iruka sighed in relief at what he learned. Anko was out with Naruto. She was a Junin in skill and was only a Tokubetsu Junin for she specialized in espionage and interrogation more than anything else. But that didn't mean she didn't excel in other areas. And combat just happened to be one of her expertise too. Hey, Anko spoke to Goku as she slowly trailed after Naruto, who was pulling the cart with all his might while getting some support from Goku. It's getting rather late. We should stop for the night and let the brat rest. It looks like he's taken about as much as he can. Looking over at Anko for a moment, Goku nodded, knowing Naruto was reaching his limit. Even with the amount of pressure he was taking off of Naruto, he knew it was a great amount of weight placed on him, still easily 200 kilograms. Yeah, it's a good first day. Hey Naruto. Goku called out to Naruto. Let's call it a day. We can get this stuff to them tomorrow. Naruto didn't even have the energy to praise the deities above. He would have simply let go of the cart, but the logical part of his brain kicked in and realized that he was beneath the handles and that would hurt him rather severely. So he gently lowered it till he managed to slip out underneath and crash to the ground, groaning. Ow! Goku chuckled, for his reaction reminded him a lot of his younger days with Krillin after a hard day's work. Tired? Well, don't worry about it. When we're done training this month, you'll be able to carry this thing here and back 10 times with no trouble at all. Okay, now I'm interested. Anko responded while Naruto's painfully groaned in response. I've trained with Guy for over a month and his physical training is extreme, but there is no way he can pull half a ton over 30 miles in a day without being tired, and that man is a beast. Maybe without his weights on, but still. Taking this into consideration, Goku put on his most thoughtful look as he pondered what he should do. He really didn't want to overpower his newest pupil over everyone in his home world. But then again, what if there was someone like Frieza, only not as strong, that came to this planet and threatened its existence? Then again, from what he knew, Frieza was known as the ruler of the known galaxy, at least from what he had told him, which meant he was probably one of the strongest beings in the universe. So there was no real threat there, and he was sure he could convince Bulma to leave a transmitter here so Naruto could call in case someone that power did show up. Still, there was the event of someone like Raditz or Vegeta showing up, and that could be very bad still, since no one on this planet could challenge the latter. He could sense there was a few that could have stood with his elder brother, and from the feeling he got from the fox within Naruto, he was sure the demons could obliterate Raditz but fall easily to someone like Vegeta. Sighing, scratching his head at what to do, Goku's stomach intervened and made a decision for him, forcing him to turn to Anko. Oh ma'am, could you set up a fire and a large spit for me? I'm going to go catch a fish in that river we passed by. While fish wasn't on Anko's favorite food list, they were kind of roughing it, and it was a good meal when away from her delicious dango. And hearing he wanted a large spit meant he was going to catch a decent-sized fish so they could all eat. Anko simply nodded. That's fine. I'll watch the brat too while you're out. Thanks. I'll be right back. Goku yelled enthusiastically as he sprinted in the direction of the river at a somewhat normal pace. But to Goku, a normal pace was jaw-dropping to Anko. Shit. Anko shook her head at the guy-level speed Goku had shown before getting everything set for a fire, which would be something she normally would have the brat do instead. You're lucky, kid. I would normally have you do this, but even I would be worn out hauling that thing, so I'll give you a break. Naruto only groaned his gratitude, still unable to get up from the spot he had flopped down at. Anko groaned back at him, wishing he wasn't so worn out that she had someone to talk to. Goku really didn't seem like someone really intelligent enough to speak with. Well, the brat wasn't either, but still, he was 12. He had a good reason for being dumb. It was how he garnered attention to himself. Frowning as she set up a campfire and set it ablaze, the Tokubetsu Junin lightly sighed. His stupidity acted much like her violent nature. An outlet to the world to keep their pain from showing. Albeit she realized that the kid's pain was probably more severe than her own. She was only shunned by those that didn't know better and a few idiots that believed she was still in league with Orochimaru. Naruto. He was shunned by mostly everyone his entire life, with few people ever caring for him. Things never got violent with him due to the Third's Law, and those even tried to do anything were struck down by devoted Anbu out of Naruto's eyesight. The kid never knew there were those that had actually tried to kill him. Sighing again as she chopped a tree with one of the few wind jutsu she knew and whittled it down to a decent-sized spit. One probably good enough for a pig now that she looked at it. Looking at Naruto for a moment, Anko shook her head. Training with this freak of strength would be a good thing if he could deliver on what he said. Drawing a kunai, sensing a presence nearby, Anko would have put it away, seeing that it came from the direction Goku went, but the presence was far different. It felt weaker for one, and the other reason was because the shadow figure she could see was slightly smaller than she was. "Who are you?" Anko demanded with narrowed eyes, gazing at this new presence that made itself known, letting Naruto's weary form realize something was off about the situation. Walking towards her and into the light, both realized that it was a young woman in her late teens who was now holding her hands up. "Sorry for the intrusion. You're a missing nin?" Anko hissed, seeing a headband wrapped around the green-haired teen's right bicep with a scratch slashed through the symbol of the waterfall. "Leave now or I will gladly take that head of yours for your bounty." The teenage girl only muttered under her breath and shook her head, speaking softly but with chakra enhancing her ears. Anko heard her as clear as day. "Like you could. What was that?" Anko dangerously hissed for this girl, underestimating her skill, for not only was she an interrogation and espionage specialist, she was quite good at hunting marks and would soon be accepted into the hunter division in Anbu. Realizing that she had been heard, the girl panicked a little and waved her hands before her in an alarmed manner. "Ah, I didn't mean for you to hear that. I was just—" A loud grumble interrupted her and a large sweat drop fell from the back of head. "I'm starving and I was wondering if you had any food you wouldn't mind sparring for a missing ninja like me. I promise I will be out of your hair soon as I'm done." Anko gave the girl a deadpan stare. Was she serious? This girl didn't seem to have a clue what a missing ninja was. Then again, there were those missing ninja that weren't rogues and instead left their village due to situation. And from the way she acted, most likely had just become a missing nin, which would explain why she had no information on this girl from the waterfall. And with no information, there was no way to trust her. "I don't think so. You can drop the innocent act, little girl, for it isn't fooling me for a moment. Now, as I said before, leave or I will put your head on a pike." Frowning, for she was hoping for some company, the green-haired girl sighed. She should have known better. In exchange for leaving the mistreatment she endured in her home for becoming a missing nin wasn't a difference. She would still be mistreated because she would always be seen as a threat. "Sorry, I just thought I had to ask." The girl sighed disappointedly before muttering to herself as she turned away. "Should have figured. Damn filthy bitch. No matter where I go, I'm going to be treated the same as back home." Wanting to curse herself for enhancing her hearing, Anko bit her lip from growling. The last thing she needed was another mistreated soul. Of all people, she could have handled a psychopath or renegade, but no. She got those with emotional scarring. Just great. Still, whether or not she was emotionally scarred or not, she was a missing ninja. And the number one rule with dealing with them was to not allow one in your midst. The reason for it was obvious. You could never trust a missing ninja, no matter their attitude. Wait, apparently Naruto didn't get the memo or understand that missing ninja are dangerous. "I'm sure we can spare some food when sensei gets back." To say Anko was pissed at Naruto was an understatement. She was absolutely livid. She had diplomatically escaped a possible showdown with a missing ninja, and then he had to go and invite her to some food. "Naruto." Anko hissed at the blonde, her eyes narrowing as she gazed over at him, while the girl stopped and gazed towards the blonde as he managed to get to a seated position. "You will stand down and not say another word till I say so." The girl let her orange eyes gaze into the boy's blues with a slight frown on her face. However, after a moment passed, the girl closed her eyes and shook her head. "Thank you, but I think I'll have to pass. I think it would be better if I were to leave now. Don't want to anger the wench anymore anyways." The girl muttered under her breath, knowing the purple-haired Tokubetsu Junin could hear her, before gazing at Naruto once more. "The name's Fu. I hope we meet on better terms, Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. Maybe you can see the world in my light by then." Anko froze. This girl knew that Naruto was the Kyuubi vessel. That didn't bode well in the slightest, yet the way she had said led her to a realization. And she realized that Fu was right. She didn't stand a chance in hell at beating her, let alone taking her head. Naruto was shocked. This was the second person today that knew of the fox inside of him. Only this one knew exactly what lay dormant within him. The only reason he had spoken was he could see the desperate look on her face the moment Anko had all but forced her from the camp. He could see how lonely she was and what was left of her hope slowly deteriorating. Yet she seemed to have something about her that made him feel uneasy yet comfortable at the same time. He wasn't sure how to place the feeling, for it was the first time he ever experienced the sensation. It just made him wonder even more about the mystery the girl happened to be. "Bye, Fu simply waved as she turned and slowly faded into the shadows, leaving a mildly confused Naruto and an antsy Anko. Brat, when we get back to Konoha I'm going to make sure it is drilled into your head about the danger you just put us in even if I have to do it myself. Anko viciously hissed at Naruto, hoping to find Kakashi or someone closer to Naruto to explain it to him for she felt she would just cause him bodily harm if she did it herself. However, the snake mistress did have a gut feeling on why Naruto offered. Whether he knew it or not, she had a feeling that he instinctively knew she was a vessel like he was. She had no proof of this but it would make sense that they could sense one another. Still, why hadn't Naruto at least sensed what Gaara was? Take that back, he probably did. He was just too blinded by the fear that Kid induced into his opponents and the bystanders watching. Even she could see how mentally unstable he was and knew just how powerful he could be, and she wanted nothing to do with the psycho redhead. Normally Naruto would have argued his point, but something about Anko's demeanor said something not to say another word or face her wrath. And from personal experience, meaning he watched many men make this mistake around violate women and occasion crossed this line with Sakura, he knew how bloody and painful it could get. Sighing, gazing over to where the fire was, Naruto dropped his head to his knees. He felt like such a screw-up at times. He knew what Anko had meant. He knew missing ninja were dangerous from Zabuza, yet he had momentarily forgotten that and let his trusting nature get the better of him. Just like how he trusted Haku before he turned out to be the hunter ninja that saved and fought with Zabuza. Maybe he was just too trusting of people. Look, Anko sighed as she slid down in front of the fire, somewhat annoyed that she had to show remorse for sending the girl away and had to explain to Naruto why she did it. Whether or not she is a good person is not the point. A missing ninja is a dangerous factor, and showing any kindness towards her could have labeled as targets as well to those chasing after her, or even worse. And don't even start with saying she was just hungry and lonely. Anko cut Naruto off before he could even say a word, knowing what the boy would say, for it was the first thought that popped into her head as well. Trust me, I know all too well about making the mistakes of trusting people I shouldn't have. Look out, Naruto suddenly cried out as Anko's eyes widened, for she sensed another presence behind her. But it was too late. She was too distracted with Naruto and the run-in from the Nanabi vessel that there was nothing she could do to block the attack, evade or replace with something to avoid being skewered. There was only one option. Letting the Fuma shuriken tear into her back, she rolled with the weapon to keep it from piercing into her vital organs or severing her spine. The spin was greater than she had expected, but not enough to keep her from being fatally wounded and allowing the shuriken to continue on, tearing into the bushes behind her. Dropping to her knees, hissing at the blow she had received, Anko narrowed her eyes at the direction the weapon had come from, only for her eyes to widen as the attacker was on her, driving his foot into her chest. Lifted up from the blow, she was driven through the spit and over and through the fire. Luckily nothing of hers caught on fire and instead smothered the flames. She would have attempted to push herself up, but the blow had been far harsher than she expected from their attacker. Spitting blood, a cruel smirk garnered her lips as she pushed herself to one knee, only to find a flurry of kunai deflected by shuriken that came from Naruto before the blonde slid before her, his face twisted in a snarl. "You bastard, how the hell did you get out of prison for what you did, Mizuki?" A little help from the outside, of course. The silver-haired missing ninja from Konoha grinned before he looked behind him at Anko. "And what a surprise that you went down as easily as you did. Distracted were we? Fuck off, you prick. I've been having a lousy week." Anko groaned as she stood onto her feet, spitting out a little more blood before standing beside Naruto. "And seeing that you're here, I would have to guess you want revenge on the kid here, right? From what I read of the report, he whipped you thoroughly, so why come back for another beating?" Biting his lip to stop a retort, Mizuki stayed calm and only grinned at Anko. "You know, Anko, what I like about you." "What?" Anko's eyes went wide in horror, feeling a very similar sensation to the release of a curse seal, along with seeing stripes spread across Mizuki's exposed flesh. "No, you didn't." Oomph. She didn't have the time to react, and Mizuki was on her with newfound speed, driving his fist into the center of her chest. The wind escaped her lungs as she was lifted from her feet before he followed with a roundhouse that caught her temple and blew her back and into the bushes. "I like it when you shut the hell up." Naruto was shocked by the sudden attack and the strength Mizuki seemed to possess now. Even from what he remembered in the academy, Mizuki never seemed that impressive, yet now it was like he had become 10 times stronger during all this time in jail. And he wasn't even going to get into that evil he could feel emanating from that tattoo that appeared onto his body. Son of a. Naruto attempted to punch Mizuki from his blind side, hoping to catch his cheek, but was sorely mistaken, for Mizuki was far quicker and drove his elbow into his chest and flung him back. Tumbling across the ground, Naruto flipped back onto his feet on the move before forming the seal for his signature technique. Unfortunately, due to his worn-out state and decreased control of chakra, he hardly was able to create as many clones as he would have liked and instead created 10. Don't think that will be enough to beat me this time, Mizuki growled, seeing the shadow clones formed before him, reminding him of the beating he took at the hands of them last time. You caught me off guard before, but this time things are different. I don't give a damn. You're going down, Naruto yelled before he charged Mizuki with his clones, preparing to give him a similar beatdown. How this time it was not to be. The moment he and his clones neared Mizuki, he destroyed the first wave with a double close line before sending those 2 clones back into another few, dispelling 4. I'm stronger. 2 clones slid underneath him, attempting to set up the same attack he used against Kiba, only for Mizuki to disappear before 3 clones came from above and crashed into their 2 lower clones, dispelling them just as Mizuki landed back at the same spot. I'm faster. And Mizuki grinned before his body began to glow and his image began to morph and his muscles bulged. Orange fur began to cover his skin with black stripes forming in a tiger-like pattern. His fingers lengthened into claws while his teeth turned to fangs. His muscles continued to bulge out of proportions, ripping his clothing to shreds but conveniently stopping at the point that would keep him from being nude. And I'm better than ever, Mizuki roared as his chakra burst from his being. This transformation and burst of chakra left Naruto stunned, but not enough for a particular statement to escape his lips, looking at the behemoth before him. Fuck. In the next moment, Naruto was blown back from a single blow from Mizuki, slamming into a tree. The air left him from the blow as his eyes widened before Mizuki was upon him and drove another blow into his solar plexus. Blood streamed from his mouth from the blow before 2 more found their way into his face, smashing him into the tree before he continued to drive fist after fist into the blonde. Each blow pushed Naruto further and further until his barrage suddenly stopped. Seneashu. Anko screamed as snakes flung from her coat sleeve, jumping out of the corner of Mizuki's eye. Instead of attempted to avoid, the behemoth simply flicked the snakes away before grabbing onto one of them and yanked Anko towards him. Seeing the Tokubetsu Junin taken off guard from this display of strength, he drove his fist into her solar plexus, dropping her in an instant. Seeing Anko was still awake, Mizuki knew he had to end this. The power he got from this transformation was limited and he could only sustain it for another few minutes. So focusing back onto Naruto, for that was his goal, Mizuki prepared to finish this once and for all. Naruto knew he could stand up to another of these blows, but there was nothing he could do. He was pinned into the tree and Mizuki was just too fast for him in this transformed state. There was only one thing to do in this situation, and he had to reach deep and hope the fox would answer his call. Drawing back his fist, pouring chakra into it, Mizuki grinned as he looked at the pathetic state of Naruto. This is the end for you. Savor your last moments, boy. Grimacing, knowing that not even the fox could save him from losing his head, Naruto tried to free himself to avoid the punch from ripping of his head. Yet he didn't budge, and even though he felt the fox stir within him, it was too late. Dust exploded before him as Mizuki crashed into the ground before he was kicked away, the dirt dispersing from the impact of the blow. And standing before Naruto was the same waterfall missing ninja, her orange eyes glowing with rage. Without hesitation she turned to Naruto and with a crash of her fist onto the bark next to him, and the entire tree shattered from the impact. Catching Naruto before he could fall, Fu sat him down next to Anko and knelt before him before she shook her head. Felt something was off here. Didn't think it would be someone trying to kill one like myself. What? Naruto was slow to the uptake, partially because he just got his head bashed in, but it began to dawn on him what the girl before him meant. Does that mean I'm the Jinchuriki of Nanabi no Kabutomushi? Fu honestly responded before she turned to Anko. And don't you say a word. I'm not helping you. Hey bitch. Mizuki screamed as he got up from the 2 blows Fu had landed on him and sent him flying. I don't know who you are, but you're going to pay for that. Standing and turning to face the traitorous Chunin, the vessel of the seven-tailed beast gazed coldly at the transformed man. I'm doing this for myself. I've dealt with many that caused me pain and tried to kill me for what I contain. It is only right I'm allowed to return the favor. Hearing her declaration, Mizuki could only grin. Oh, this was just perfect. Not only would he get to kill one demon today, he would take care of two. Laughing out loud, making both Anko and Naruto grimace, Chakra began to dance around the tiger like man. This day can't get any better. Finally things are coming my way. I wouldn't say that, Fu stated as she gazed at the intimidating figure before her before a glint shimmered in her eyes. Oh, and what are you going? Gak. Mizuki suddenly doubled over in pain, Fu standing directly before him with her fist located directly in his sternum. Why you little? Attempting to recover quickly from the blow, he reached out to grab her throat only for the waterfall missing ninja to grab both of his wrists. Using the extreme strength this form granted him, he continued forth with his goal only to realize one thing. He couldn't move his arms an inch. How is this happening? Mizuki roared as he tried to pull his hands back only for Fu to suddenly pull the behemoth into her, driving her knee into his stomach before falling onto his knees. His form slowly began to recede into the norm, his clothes barely hanging onto his flesh, before he fell to all fours as he felt utterly spent. How can this be? Just into his. I'm this damaged. Do you understand now? Fu's voice echoed in front of him as the teenage girl stood directly before him, forcing him to look up and into her eyes. You never stood a chance. Being the vessel of this cursed beast does grant me one good thing. Strength that is unrivaled in the elemental countries. My physical strength far surpasses even the greatest taijutsu masters in the world. No one is stronger than I am. Fu screamed as she pulled her fist back, her eyes burning in rage as all her hatred came forward and was being pushed into her strike. Now are your last seconds. Pray to your God that he's merciful on your soul. The horror was almost too much for Mizuki. Everything had gone so well. Anko hardly presented him a challenge and he creamed the demon brat, but now this demon whore appeared and everything was ruined. All the strength he gained was for nothing. His eyes widened as her fist stopped just centimeters from taking his head clean off. However, it was not because she had wanted to stop. A firm hand gripped her wrist and held her hand steady. Don't. He's no longer a threat. Who are you? Fu growled in frustration that she was kept from taking out her revenge against an obvious hater of her kind. Let go of me so I can finish the job, you fool. And what will that bring? Goku fired back, carrying an unconscious body under his other armpit while the mother of all fishes was hung over the same arm's shoulder. Killing him will just continue the cycle of hatred. Don't let anger cloud your judgment. It will only cause you more pain in the end. Biting back a retort, for she wouldn't care for what this man had to say, she couldn't do anything but listen. He kept her arm firmly still and she couldn't move it a hair. Not only that, he had stopped her punch at full power. That punch was enough to level even an entire village, albeit a small one. She knew that for she had done so, leaving her former village a wreck. And this man caught that punch with little effort. She would not cross this one. Fine, let go of my hand. Doing as she said, Goku released her hand before turning to Mizuki and knocking him out with a quick chop to the back of the neck. Dropping the unconscious man held underneath him next to him, Anko's eyes widened. That's Rokusho Aoi, but how? He attacked me after I caught my fish using this sword. Goku commented before tossing a wooden sword handle to Anko, shocking her even more for it was Raijin's sword that belonged to the Nidaime Hokage. I knocked him out and came back here soon after for I sensed something was wrong. Sorry I wasn't able to get here in time. But hey, I brought dinner. Fu narrowed her eyes. If her suspicion was correct, this man could have easily made the trip from the river to this spot in no time. So why did he take his time to intervene? Was he expecting her to do something? That thought made her growl before and narrow her eyes further. Just what was this man and why did the Nanabi feel so uncomfortable in his presence? However, she had to blink once she registered the fish. If that could even be called a fish. My god, that thing is enormous. It has to be half a ton. Probably. Goku shrugged as he plopped the fish before where the fire used to be. He was a fighter too. It took me a good minute to wrangle him before pulling him out of the water and another keeping him from getting back in. Okay, that is good and all but there is no way we can eat all of that. Anko yelled out, momentarily forgetting her injuries, for they weren't enough to impede her from her regular functions outside of sleeping well. Plus, do you realize how long it will take me to make a spit for that thing? There isn't a way in hell I'm doing that. I can. A voice spoke before 3 Anbu dropped from the trees above, having seen the whole thing and let it played out. We're here for both Mizuki and Aoi, so we'll take them, but first. Going through a few hand seals, wood erupted from the ground below and morphed into a massive spit. Nodding at his creation, the cream Anbu motioned for the other 2 to take the unconscious ninja back to the village. Is everyone here okay? Could be doing better, Naruto sarcastically responded, as he was very sore and rather bruised from Mizuki's attack. Snapping his finger, yet another Anbu appeared at his side before moving to Naruto. Do not worry, Taka is an excellent field medic. She'll be finished in a moment. Letting her to her job before she moved on to Anko, healing her wounds, the medic Anbu moved to her captain, who simply nodded and turned from the scene. You were lucky this time we were in the area. Next time you might not be. By the way, Anko, we'll want a full report of this when you return. Fuck you. Anko screamed just as the 2 Anbu disappeared from their vision, avoiding the fearsome wrath of the legendary snake mistress. Ignoring her as she began ranting, Goku was glad there was still enough wood to start a fire before setting to work on getting the fish ready to eat. Seeing this, Fu simply plopped down before the now roaring fire and waited for it to be ready, for she was rather hungry. Of course, this didn't go unnoticed by the aforementioned ranting Anko. And you, what do you think you are doing? I did help you, did I not? Fu hissed, for the last thing she wanted to deal with was what she considered a normal person. Seeing that I did save your asses, I do believe I'm entitled to some compensation. And it just so happens I'm hungry, so just be grateful that I don't take something else instead. Anko quickly shut up, remembering what the green-haired teen did to the tree that entrapped Naruto. Someone with that kind of strength she did not want to deal with, but that made her wonder. Just how strong was Goku? He stopped her fist like it was nothing. As both Anko and Goku were off in their own worlds, one working to get food ready while the other ranted to herself, Naruto sat next to Fu. After hearing that she was a vessel, there were so many things he wanted to say. So many things he wanted to discuss. Hey, don't bother. Fu cut him off, closing her eyes and turning away from Naruto. I'm not in the mood for it right now. Maybe in the morning, but for now let me be. Feeling somewhat put off, for all he wanted to do was to talk to her, find out a little more about someone like him. Naruto was about to respond heatedly when she cut him off again. And do not think we are the same, she suddenly added as she turned her gaze back at him and letting her furious orange eyes burn into his blues. You have no idea of my anger towards humanity. You may be able to understand, but do not think for a moment you are anything like me. At least not yet anyways. Fu trailed off as she broke eye contact, her mood and demeanor suddenly changing from enraged to depressed in a split second before she laid on her back and rolled away from him. Wake me when the fish is ready. Okay, Naruto said, for he wasn't sure what else to say. Looking at her for a moment longer, Naruto stood up and decided to see what he could do to help. After all, he could talk to Fu in the morning, if she was in a good mood. As the light of the fire began to fade, Fu awoke without a stir and sat up. Gazing upon the camp, her orange eyes gleamed as they looked at the other 3 that slept in the camp with her. The purple-haired one she could care less about. She was simply a human, a filthy, disgusting and untrustworthy human. Still, there was no point in extracting revenge on her for her treatment. She was following the ninja code, and allowing a missing ninja in their midst was unwise, only doing so for they were indebted to her. That she could accept. The purple-haired one was a true kunoichi, unlike many other female ninja she had seen, and for that there was the smallest amount of respect. Not enough to be forgiven for being human, of course. The next was the enigma of a man known as Goku. He had wrangled a massive half-ton fish, cooked it and then proceeded to devour the majority of it while being courteous enough to let them eat and spare some of the food for her on her travels. However, he overshot her appetite by a mile. The amount he gave her would sat her for well over a month, if not 2. 100 pounds of fish tended to be a little much. Add on the fact that he had to eat 4/5 of the fish. She doubted his humanity, for even Nanabi was shocked at his appetite. Talking about the Nanabi and Goku, she frowned. She could not understand why the demon feared this man so. The only man that was known to ever face off a tailed beast and lived to tell the story was the deceased third Raikage, who battled the Hachibi to a draw. So just how power could he be to make a Biju want to flee instead of standing their ground? Getting tired, for the Nanabi was not answering her questions or didn't have the answers for them, her gaze finally fell upon the last of the group. The vessel of the nine-tailed fox. Fu sighed. He reminded her too much of her old self before she fell into the darkness that consumed her being. So innocent, so sure that others would recognize him for who he was and not for the beast inside of him. It was almost sickening to see. The last thing she wanted to see was the creation of another like herself, and she had half a mind to simply kidnap the boy to protect him from her fate. Yet she knew better. There was still hope in his eyes, which meant there were those that cared. And there was something else located within his blue orbs. Something that she did not possess. An ironclad will and determination that would not falter. And with those three things in his soul, he could persevere and become something like the Nibi or Hachibi vessels of the cloud. Sighing, she stood to her feet and dusted herself off since she did not have a sleeping bag. She would have to stop at the next town to pick one up, for she had been in a rush to get away from the ruined waterfall village. Not wanting to outlive her welcome at the camp any longer, the green-haired Jinchuriki sighed as she gazed at the sleeping blonde. Smiling softly at him, she shook her head before adjusting her hair clip, for it had faltered in her sleep. "Well, see you around, kid. Maybe we'll speak at another time. If I'm not captured by then." Fu sadly admitted, knowing very well what dangers lay before her that were far worse than any hunters the waterfall could send after her. After adjusting her clothes slightly, for they had shifted in her sleeping, and lifting her pack, she made her way down the road silently, letting no one know she left. It was best that way. No one knew what happened with Fu in the morning. Naruto figured they would have looked for her, but Anko had to convince him otherwise. It had been rather difficult with Naruto being as stubborn. But he gave in after an explanation and various reasons why she left, most of them revolving around being a missing ninja and hunter ninja finding her within their camp. It didn't make Naruto feel any better, for he really wanted to talk to her. After all, she was the first he knew that happened to be like him. He would have liked to know why she had chosen the path she did. Still, his mind was the furthest from those thoughts at the current moment. One would think they would plague him all day, but there was a very simple reason why this was not the case. Dragging a half-ton ox cart would tend to do that to a person. But at last Konoha was coming into his sight, and Naruto was never as glad to see the village as he was now. With this chipper attitude, he began to move at a slightly faster pace, determined to get back home and deliver the goods to Tuchi and Ayame. Anko was somewhat surprised to see the blonde moving the cart faster, accidentally pulling it from Goku's grip as he seemed to be off in a different world, probably thinking about food. But what she hadn't expected happened. Naruto was carrying the cart on his own and dragging it at the same pace he had before. Her eyes widened at what she noticed when she saw this. His muscles strained but seemed to bulge and strengthen to handle the weight without breaking stride. Add to the fact that he didn't notice that the weight suddenly increased. She was perplexed at this sudden development. She had to wonder where that extra burst of strength came from. She would have liked to have said it was from the fox, but there was nothing to suggest it did. That meant this strength was his own. What the? This doesn't make any sense. Anyone that has ever seen the kid under stress could see talent and power left untapped. Anko thought to herself, seeing this event with a frown on her face before her attention turned to Goku. Could just his mere presence be bringing out his potential? This just adds onto my confusion about you, Goku. Meanwhile, Goku had simply zoned out. However, it wasn't for the reason Anko had thought. Food was the furthest thing about his mind, for he had noticed what happened when Naruto took the cart from him. King Kai, can you tell me what you know about how the warriors on this planet control their Kai? It just doesn't feel natural. Ah, you've noticed the spirit energy, I see. The voice of King responded, having been talking to Goku the entire time he had zoned out. It is interesting, since only the dead are supposed to be able to tap into it, but the people on this planet learned how to mix it with their chakra. No, not mix it. They use it to contain their Kai, molding it to their will so they can perform powerful techniques. King Kai added after a moment to let Goku absorb what he was saying. Or at least that is what I understand from what Hashirama explained to me. To be honest, I've only trained a little less than 10 people from that planet, for only they earned the right to be trained by me. Even if they failed to cross Snake Way. Nodding, for he believed he understood, Goku smiled seeing Naruto pull the cart on his own and noting that some of his untapped potential came forth to the surface from the strain it placed on him. King Kai, that reminds me. Is there a way for me to teach him how to use Kai? King Kai didn't respond immediately, thinking for a moment about the three he had trained. It is possible, but it is very difficult to do. Only one of my warriors was able to do it, and that was because she already was used to using chakra freely. It is also rather painful from what I remember, for it places a lot of strain on their body. Afterwards they will stronger, but they lose their ability to use their techniques if they are able to withstand the onslaught of the spiritual energy rushing from their body. My other two attempted to release their Kai. They failed, and while they survived, it severely crippled their fighting abilities for a long time. The Northern Kai added with a solemn tone, remembering what happened to two of his prized warriors after failing the procedure. Once again Goku was in a thoughtful dilemma like the day before hearing this. Would it be really worth it to teach him how to wield his Kai if it cost Naruto such a price? It was obvious to see that he prided his techniques from the little exchanges he and Anko had during breaks. He also didn't want to put him under such a painful experience without being sure he would be able to wield Kai afterwards or become crippled. The risk was almost too much when another voice broke his attention from King Kai's link, someone obviously laying their hand on the Kai to speak to Goku directly. Let Naruto decide. It is up to him whether or not to go through it after he learns the risks and rewards. What? Goku tried to respond when King Kai interrupted him. I have to agree on this one. It should be up to him to decide. Either way, you should still be able to train him to an acceptable level. So after testing his level, give him the choice. King Kai added on before he gave a soft sigh. Trouble is coming to his planet soon, and there needs to be someone strong enough to stop it. You're the only person that can make him strong enough to handle this threat, that I'm sure of. Frowning at hearing that, Goku had to wonder what it was before stopping his own thought process. I see. It is best if it was someone from here to deal with it instead of an outsider like me. So I'm guessing it is someone on this planet that will start up this trouble. Yes, and it will be very soon. That is why I need you to train him so that someone will be ready for it. King Kai mentioned before shaking out of his stupor. Anyways, you need to pay more attention to your pupil. You're back at the village. Oh. Goku responded before noticing that they were indeed in the village and were almost at the ramen stand. Alright. Talk to you later, King Kai. I've got to charge up before getting onto his training. Having the connection cut, King Kai twitched knowing that Goku was going to stuff his face with the noodles. The Northern Kai simply sighed as there was nothing he could do about that. Goku would do his best in training the kid to be as strong as possible. Well, I've set everything up. If everything goes as planned, he'll be able to stop him and bring forth the next era of peace. That is good to know. The man stated, his purple eyes gazing over towards many of the other fighters before landing on one specific person, one of the few women warriors on the planet battling Obilu, one of the strongest fighters there, and seemed to be holding her own. So should we tell her? I'm sure she would understand. Shows what you know. King Kai snapped at the man with ringed eyes before his gaze fell onto the red-haired woman. She'll bite our heads off knowing what we're planning. With her son no less. Good point. The man said with a grimace on his face before a worse realization fell upon him, making his grimace increase tenfold. But do you realize what will happen if we don't tell her? The Northern Kai stayed silent in contemplation, going through several scenarios on what would happen when she did learn of what they did. When he finished his simulations, he had one thing to say. Well, shit. Back with the Z warrior and his new pupil, Goku had finished devouring another monstrous amount of ramen before deciding he had enough, and now led Naruto to a spot he thought was a good place to train Naruto. Little did he know he took Naruto to his team's normal training grounds. He simply thought that the amount of trees around gave good enough cover while there were enough open spaces to freely move. Alright, this place looks good, Goku commented after taking a good look around and finding a good spot that was surrounded by the forest. Before we begin, I want to test you. I want you to come at me with everything you've got. Don't hold back, otherwise I can't tell what you need to work on. Despite being a little sore from the excursion back to the village, Naruto grinned. Now they were finally getting to some real training. So wanting to prove how strong he had become, he rushed the Saiyan with little forethought on what he was going to do first. There was only one thing on his mind. A fist to the face. Tumbling backwards from the simple punch Goku gave him, Naruto rubbed his face while Goku merely sweat dropped at the scene. Okay. I was too excited and wasn't thinking. Naruto stood up and shook his head before his cerulean eyes glowed with new respect for his sensei. Now I'll take this seriously. Watching Naruto charge this time, seeing a distinct difference in his movement this time, Goku couldn't help but grin. Naruto was almost on him when he jumped to the side, expecting to evade a punch or to break through his guard. Goku easily pushed the punch away and let the boy continue with his assault so he could start to gauge him. Having each furious punch that he threw batted away, Naruto lost his balance and started to fall forward. Using the directional momentum to his balance, Naruto flipped to land on his feet before he threw a kick aimed for his back. Naruto was surprised when Goku easily flipped over the kick, placed his hand on his head to push himself further into the air for a few more flips before he landed a good 5 meters from him. To be honest, he was stunned at the fluidity that came from such a movement. He was sure to make something like that look so easy had to take many years of training. His respect for Goku rose another notch. This guy was definitely a great fighter and could teach him a few things. Taking a moment to collect himself and think about how charging him straight forward worked, Naruto knew on his own he couldn't break through his guard, and if there was any chance on laying a hit on him it would be with his clones. So gathering his chakra, 20 clones formed next to him. He was disappointed at the low amount, for he put a good portion of chakra into that before remembering the old man saying his chakra was out of whack and he would have to work on it. Pushing that aside, he quickly went through a plan and his clones charged towards Goku. Knowing about the multi-body technique, Goku knew how to defend. However, what he felt from the first few Narutos to reach him was that their power had not decreased like how it did with just Kai. He guessed that was a benefit from concentrating on control, and the strength reduced was minimal and made it a more effective technique. Over 5 clones were attacking Goku while the others watched, waiting for an opening to blast him into the air. To their surprise, even with each clone attacking from a different spot, each blow easily deflected or dodged before the Saiyan finally decided to attack back. Ducking beneath all the blows, Goku placed his hand onto the ground for balance before he slammed his foot into one of the clones. Controlling the kick, he carried the clone full circle and threw the other clones before sending him into a small bunch of clones, dispersing all of them into clouds of smoke that clouded his vision. Every clone attacked this time knowing they had to take this advantage. What they didn't suspect was that Goku didn't need to see them to know where they were. He could sense where they were. Clone after clone was dispelled the moment they went into the smoke to attack. Feeling that there was only 2 left, he knew one was the real Naruto and planned to simply knock him back, and while dispelling the other since he could tell the 2 apart. Or that was what he thought when he hit the supposed clone. Instead, it flung back and into and through a tree. Watching the other go up in smoke like the others, Goku rushed over to Naruto to see if he was alright. Obviously he didn't mean to hurt him, but he had put enough strength in that punch to knock out someone almost twice the kid's strength. "Are you okay?" Goku asked as he looked down at Naruto, worried that he might have hurt him far more than he meant. It was then Naruto smirked before dispersing like all the others. At that moment he knew this was a ploy for Naruto to get Goku to drop his guard. He couldn't help but smirk at his clever maneuver. He knew how overmatched he was, and the moment he knew it he had to come up with a strategy to make him drop his guard. Turning on a dime, he easily caught Naruto's knee in his hand and saw the boy's eyes widen. Not bad, but letting his Kai begin to rise, letting Naruto get a gasp on what he was dealing with, Goku smirked. But not good enough. Just from a sudden burst of energy, Naruto was sent flying and skidding across the ground before he eventually rolled into a tree with a great enough force for it to creak from the blow. There was no grunt, nothing. Nothing but the shock of the blow and Naruto's eyes sliding closed, being knocked unconscious from the blow. Goku chuckled lightly to himself, once again believing he overdid it, but it was enough to get his point across, hopefully. Noting that in his head to help Naruto better prepare for fights and how to learn on the go, he sighed as he went over and lifted Naruto onto his shoulder before a sudden realization dawned on him. "Oh man, I don't know where he lives. I guess I'll just take him to that Hokage guy then. I'm sure he knows." Goku sighed and shook his head for a moment before he headed out and towards the bridge, only to stop and turn. "Who's there?" "Ah." A loud squeal came from underneath the bridge, leaving Goku confused as it was obviously the voice belonged to a young girl. Deciding to figure out what was going on, he appeared directly behind her before speaking. "Hello. Didn't mean to startle you, but what are you doing here?" "Ah," the blue-haired girl screamed out at Goku suddenly appearing behind her. Gripping her heart from the fright, it was a surprise that she didn't pass out. She had a hard time dealing with shock, something she attributed to her lack of confidence and having a thin blood flow. The blue-haired girl slowly turned to see the man that was carrying Naruto on his shoulder. Normally she had a difficult time being around Naruto. It wasn't that she hated him like many others that she noted did. She had a hard time being around him due to having a deep-seated crush on the blonde, for he was everything she wanted to be. And due to her lack of confidence and being shocked easily normally sent her to the world of unconsciousness. Yeah, needless to say she hated not being able to stand up for what she wanted. At least she was starting to make progress, for this normally would have knocked her out. I was here to see if Naruto wanted to get some ramen. Hinata quickly came up with any excuse she could, for she didn't want anyone to know she followed Naruto around quite often for inspiration. "Oh, are you like his girlfriend or something?" Goku responded, figuring that Naruto had to know this girl rather well if she was coming out to take him out for some dinner. It reminded him a lot of Chi-Chi coming to get him after a good day of training. Hinata wanted to scream yes to Goku's question, but she silenced that voice with a mental mallet and went back to her meek demeanor. No, I'm just a friend." Goku had to wonder why she was so nervous. At first he thought it was because of him and surprising her, but now she was poking her fingers together in a weird manner. Since he couldn't decipher her actions, Goku simply shrugged it off as unimportant before smiling sheepishly. "Well, as you can see, I went a little overboard in our spar today, so I'm taking him home, but I have no clue where he lives, so I know where he lives." Hinata suddenly shouted out before her face went bright red out of embarrassment before she retreated into her mind and began to pummel inner Hinata to near death with a mallet. Once she was done with murdering her more confident self-conscious, Hinata weakly motioned Goku to follow her. "I can show you from here. It isn't too far away." "Thanks." Goku responded and followed Hinata as they went into town. As they went through the streets of Konoha, as the sun began to dim, Goku was taking a mental note of all the stores he saw. Not seeing anything he needed and seeing they were nearing and heading towards an apartment building, he had to ask the girl a question. "Do you happen to know of a place here that sells custom GI and some weights?" Stopping for a moment, wondering why this man didn't know where to get such equipment, Hinata shook her head, figuring he was a traveling monk, since only monks were the only warrior class allowed free entrance into a village and could legally train any ninja they felt like. "There are a few stores, but I would have to go with Hitomi's weapons. It is a few blocks down from Ichiraku's. You can't miss it since it is on the same street. Thanks again. I was going to look for some weights for Naruto, but I realized I needed GI since this isn't too comfortable to fight in," Goku stated before motioning to his multicolored outfit. Hinata had to nod at that. It was rather flamboyant and it didn't look too comfortable either, so she couldn't deny it. It also looked like it would easily flake off the muscled man if he started to move at an accelerated pace. Arriving at Naruto's apartment, Hinata began to fiddle with her hair for a moment before a key fell out and onto the ground. Simply staring at Goku for a moment after she picked it up, as if trying to tell him not to tell Naruto she had a copy, Hinata unlocked the door. "There, I'll be going. Tell Naruto I said hello." "Okay," Goku stated and was about to take Naruto into his apartment when he realized something and called out to the girl. "Wait, I didn't catch your name, so I can tell him who helped me take him home." Hinata stopped. Oh, she so wanted to tell him her name so that she could say she helped Naruto. But she couldn't. She just couldn't. She knew that Naruto would try to make it up for her and she was quite certain she couldn't handle that. For all her feelings towards Naruto, she knew very well what his presence did to her, and she didn't want to come across any weaker than she already had. After all, she was trying to look better in front of him, trying to act like he would. She couldn't handle looking like a fool in front of him. I'm just a friend. Just a friend." Hinata winced at her own words before she slowly began to head down the stairs and head back down to the street. Huh? Goku looked stumped at what happened. One second the girl seemed to have something akin to Chi-Chi in her, and the next she was acting meeker than Gohan when he introduced his son to his friends. Weird. Wonder what's wrong with her. Oh well. Goku shrugged, for it was nothing that concerned him, and took Naruto into his apartment and laid him in his bed. "I'll come and get you tomorrow morning to start our training." Heading out the door, forgetting to lock it as he closed it behind him. Goku left and decided to go speak with the Hokage anyways. After all, he didn't know where he was going to spend the night after all. But little did he know a certain heiress noticed his actions and silently crept back to Naruto's one-room apartment. Opening it to check upon Naruto, she sighed and started picking up the trash that was strewn across the room, leaving certain things behind, for she knew what not to throw away. After all, some of these were treasures to Naruto. Like the ramen cup that had his, Kiba's, Shikamaru's and Choji's name on it after they performed their first prank together. Shaking her head at this, she left things like that alone and finished cleaning up. She did this every day, most of the time during the middle of the day, so that he wouldn't wake and catch her doing this. She had to make up for not being able to tell him her feelings for him somehow. Looking over at Naruto, Hinata smiled before she realized one very outstanding fact. Naruto was indeed in the room, and he could wake up at any time and see her there. "Ah," she squealed before rushing out the door, slamming it shut and locking it to try and impede Naruto from following. Not that it mattered. He was still unconscious, but Hinata didn't realize that, nor care. She left in a hurry, leaving a certain white-haired man to blink at the situation oddly. "What the?" Jiraiya spoke aloud to himself, wondering what in the world just happened. Then an idea hit him and he began to furiously write in a notebook. "This will be gold. I will call it ICHA tactics." My head," was the first thing that came from Naruto's lips the moment he awoke. His entire world was spinning, still reeling from the blow that was given to him. It was probable that he had a concussion, but thanks to the fox it was almost completely cured outside of the dizziness that he felt. However, it wasn't like Naruto thought like that or knew the fox healed him and kept his body at peak condition at all times whenever possible. After all, Kyuubi would not have a weak vessel. However, it became painfully obvious where Naruto was when his dizzy spell came to an end. He was in what looked like a dark and dank sewer. This seemed somewhat familiar to him, though he wasn't sure why. Once he was to his feet, he looked around before groaning. He had no clue where he was. So going with his gut instinct, he headed into the maze-like halls of the sewer. But after a moment he realized that it felt like he was in autonomous mode, for even he couldn't contemplate why he was heading deeper into the maze. If anything, he wanted out, but his gut told him otherwise, which led him to this open room. With giant steel bars with a strip of paper keeping the steel gates together. Despite never having been here before, Naruto had begun to understand where he was. He was in his own mind, and that meant this cage before him held the bane of his existence. So without further hesitation, Naruto called the fox out. "Hey wimpy fox, what am I doing here?" On second thought, Naruto really should have chose his words better, for a loud roar bellowed through the cage, followed by an oppressive wave of red chakra that soon collided into him and flung him against the wall. Groaning as he peeled his body off the wall, Naruto stumbled to feet before another roar from the fox demon caught his attention. "Insolent fool, the one time I bring you here to talk you poke fun at my situation. I will enjoy the day I'm free, for I will eviscerate your corpses and devour your friends." "Well, since that's never happening, can you get on with what you brought me here for, you idiot fox?" Naruto responded with an amused tone, finding it rather hilarious that he could get a rise out of the fox. Either Naruto had a death wish or had masochistic tendencies, for he got blasted into the wall again for angering the demon fox and got back up just like before. "Do you enjoy this because I can do this all day? If not, I'd rather get down to business, worthless human. So can we get on with it then? Unlike you, I don't have all day to just sit around." Naruto just didn't seem to know when to stop and insulted Kyuubi once more. However, this time the demon fox twitched at the blonde before him. Growling underneath its breath, the demon fox glared at the Uzumaki. "Damn mortal, you are just like her." "Wait, what? Just like who?" Naruto's curiosity had now been piqued. Apparently the Kyuubi had someone in its past that reminded it of her, and now he was somewhat interested to who he was compared to. "It is unimportant as of now. That is for a different time." Kyuubi responded in a growl before getting to the reason for why it had brought Naruto here. "Mortal, did you sense what that power when your new sensei knocked you unconscious?" Blinking, for he had no clue what the demon fox was even talking about, for the event was rather hazy, Naruto thought about it for a moment. I did sense he had a lot of power. It felt like he was very strong. However, I get the same vibe when I'm around the old man. Looking at the blonde for a moment, a dark chuckle escaped the demon's muzzle. You are young and foolish boy. But at least you have a sense about you knowing he is powerful. However, you have no clue just how powerful he is, for you failed to see its depth. Naruto was taken aback by what Kyuubi had said. Just how was it that the demon fox knew of this yet he was unable to sense the same thing? What? Just how do you know? It matters not. Let us just say you are my window to the world. The Nine Tails responded before its crimson eyes gazed over his being with intensity. However, I have a request of you. Accept whatever he tries to teach you. This one has power I've never seen before, and anything he can teach you will be beneficial. The blonde couldn't help but frown at the way Kyuubi had phrased, beneficial. It sounded like it, the demon fox that terrorized Konoha almost 13 years ago, found something interesting about his sensei and wanted to learn from him. If that it could learn, that could be disastrous later on in his life. What are you up to? Naruto narrowed his eyes while he tried to figure out what it was the fox wanted. Kyuubi simply gazed Naruto a feral grin before a crimson aura began to grow around him. What I want is inconsequential to you at this time. However, for now your strength is what matters, not mine. And I need a strong vessel, for I will not bow to Nanabi or any others in any aspect. You will become stronger if I have to force my power into you. Now be gone from this place. Kyuubi roared before the crimson chakra exploded from the demon fox's body and washed over Naruto, pushing him back despite his effort to stand his ground. In the end it did not matter, and the red chakra blasted him from the room and back into the world of the living. My head. Naruto woke in the same kind of funk he had awoken to within his mind. Stupid fox. Would it have killed him to take care of this massive headache? Hey, you're finally awake. Goku's voice echoed from nearby. Of course it was too early in the morning for Naruto, and his senses weren't the sharpest at this time of day. So he did what mostly anyone would do in the same situation. He jumped up and screamed like a little girl. After he turned to see who it was that spoke, Naruto clutched his hand over his heart before glaring at the Saiyan. He absently noted his clothing was different, wearing an orange gi and a blue undershirt, but that didn't matter at the moment. Don't do that. It isn't even 6 in the morning. Most people sleep until at least 8, and Kakashi-sensei doesn't start his training till at least noon. Goku laughed sheepishly for a moment before he shrugged his shoulders before his face fell and turned serious. Well, get used to it. Starting today you will be getting up at this time to start on our training. Today will be one of the harder days for you since this is the start of the routine. After today the workload will increase day by day to the point where you might not be able to handle it. So prepare yourself and get ready. When we're going to run laps around Konoha till I say to stop before moving on to other tasks I have set up for you today. Goku added before he jumped from the windowsill and into the room, tilting his head just enough to each side to pop it. Gulping, wondering just what he was in for, Naruto nodded, and in a hurry he slid on only his jump pants and fresher t-shirt since the one he was wearing was soaked with his sweat. Yet just before he was ready to follow, Goku sat down at his small table before revealing a small bowl. But before we begin, it isn't good to start on an empty stomach, so I brought some food for you. Sighing in relief, Naruto greedily dove into the ramen bowl that Goku had brought for him. The Saiyan simply laughed and shook his head. They were just so alike at times it was funny. Things were weird for her without her other teammate and her sensei around. The last few days felt rather awkward. If she were to guess, she would have to say she had become used to their eccentric personalities and the flair they brought into her mornings, and without them, everything else was rather dull. Tenten sighed as she adjusted her left bun, for it had become slightly undone from her morning workout. It just wasn't the same without Lee or Guy there occasionally lapping by her, and Neji as they sprinted through their laps while shouting encouragement back to her to keep up with the good work. Unlike the two of them, she just didn't have the stamina to sprint 10 laps around Konoha and then go straight into their training workouts. So instead she would jog the laps while wearing weighted wrist and ankle bands. Nothing too heavy, only 10 pounds each, but enough to put a strain on her limbs while she was training. It was then she remembered her fight against Tamari and how easily she had been outclassed. Clenching her fists and grinding her teeth together, she refrained from lashing out at the closest inanimate object to her, a building, for she was almost to the outside of Konoha to do her routine laps around the village. Despite all her hard work and her expertise in weapons, she came up short against an opponent that neutralized what she did best. But now that she looked back on the fight, if she had just snuck in and made it a close-range fight, she could have destroyed the Sand Kunoichi. Tenten made a mental note to start increasing her training weights. She had to get stronger so she wouldn't fall against someone like her again. There would be others that would be able to neutralize her weaponry or best in her expertise, and she needed something to fall back on. And thanks to Guy Sensei, she had that something, but she needed to work on it more. Well, look what we have here. A voice that Tenten wished she would never have to hear again before turning to see the bane of her current thoughts. Sabaku Tamari, repressing the urge to draw a kunai and to beat her down for that ever-confident grin and attitude, Tenten uttered a growl. Do you have something to say? If not, I would rather just leave you be and get on to what I came out here for. Now, there is no need to be so hostile. Temari's grin widened seeing Tenten's ire, for it seemed she was just there to taunt her. I've only come out here for the same reason you probably have. Tenten had half a mind to groan out in despair. Of course something like this had to happen just as she got out here after telling her parents she was going out to train and would come back in the afternoon to look after the shop. Her luck just had to be that bad. It seemed Tamari noticed this before showing her papers to the gate guard before speaking up to the guard. My friend and I here are going to run some laps, if that is okay? The gate guard, Azumo, simply shrugged his shoulders, since that was a rather normal occurrence at this time of day before his partner, Katetsu, spoke for him. Yeah, go ahead. There is already a few doing their laps for the day. Never thought I'd see the day someone could keep up with and then blow by Guy without his weights on. Katetsu muttered to himself afterwards, shaking his head in disbelief at what he had saw not too long ago. Luckily Tenten didn't catch this mutter, otherwise she would have fallen unconscious from the shock. Instead, she was heatedly glaring at Tamari for calling her a friend. She didn't like the sadistic Kunoichi in the slightest, and being considered a friend to her just. There was no freaking way. Sensing this anger directed towards her, Tamari simply grinned. She had always found it rather fun to get under others' skin and fluster them, making them say more than what they truly wanted to say. It was a great way to get intelligence, and right now she was scouting out her and her brother's opponents for the finals. Not that it mattered, but still. Oh, stop it already. It isn't like what I did was anything personal. I was sending a message and hopefully those two bimbos and the spineless one got it. Tamari rolled her eyes before figuring that she would go by and try to get on her good side. Or at least try to. It wasn't like she needed to do this anyways. It was just to get data on those that could be a threat. Tenten raised her eyebrow at this. She understood what she meant and who she was pointing out, but she didn't strike her as the type to care for anyone other than herself. At least you take your training seriously and work to get better. You just got bad luck and I happened to be your opponent. There we go. That sounds more like the conceited wench. Tenten commented before adjusting her weights slightly before she suddenly took off, not giving Tamari any warning. The Wind Maiden simply smirked, and even with her fan behind her, Tamari quickly caught up to Tenten and kept pace with her. Widening her eyes in shock at what she was seeing, Tenten couldn't help but curse. This Kunoichi was good, and now she was beginning to understand why she lost. However, that much she had to give her credit for. I see. We're more alike than I wanted to think. Probably, except I'm a little more sadistic than you. Tamari nodded, for she could see some similarities in the girl she was keeping up with, finding the speed they was rather relaxing since it was about the same speed she went doing laps around Suna. Then again, being around Gaara these last few years and seeing what he does. I guess he has rubbed off onto me a little. The Wind Maiden added mentally as her thoughts went to her red-haired brother before shivering, remembering what he did to those rain ninja and the crazed glint that he gained during the fight against this girl's teammate. I just have one thing I want to ask you. It is about that teammate of yours, if you would. Tenten suddenly spoke up and knocked Tamari out of her thoughts before shrugging back at her. Does anyone here stand a chance against him? No. Your friend was the first person that has ever managed to hit him, and that was only because of his speed. The Uchiha and Hyuga stand no chance of ever beating him. Not even the Junin in our village dared challenge Gaara. Tamari answered honestly, since there was no harm in telling her what their odds were. Tenten narrowed her eyes. It sounded as if the sand had brought over a Junin in guise of a genin to take these exams. However, because of his age, it wasn't hard to believe that he was a genin since he seemed to only be 12, but from what she had heard. So no one stands a chance but the sand, is that it? Unless one of you Leaf Ninja come out of nowhere and gain incredible strength for this tournament, Gaara will win it since the two best of Konoha are on his side and he will only get stronger through the matches. Temari stated without fail, for she knew her brother was the best there was. It was then two people passed by them, one in an orange GI while the other wore a green spandex and Junin flak jacket, both of them running backwards. Come on Naruto, just 10 more lap and we'll move on to the agility building exercise next. While for Tenten 10 laps was normal, and even to an extent for Temari, to hear 10 more laps to go for someone outside of Guy or Lee was rather ridiculous for her. Temari was just wondering who in the world would want to run that much and then do agility building drills after. Yash, let the springtime of your youth drive you forward to greatness, young Naruto-kun. I will help you get to 50 laps or I will run 20 laps for you. Guy boisterously bellowed afterwards, gladly helping a fellow Leaf Ninja train in an area he happened to excel in. A large bead of sweat fell from the back of her head, knowing this was Tenten's sensei, and turned to the girl who was blushing up a storm. Just letting you know, I'm sorry. Yeah, I get that a lot, so thanks. Tenten muttered back, grateful that at least someone else could see her sensei's insanity other than her. Before her she raised her eyebrow. But did he say he was helping someone get to 50? Who in the world could do that many laps? It was just then they noted there was a third presence hustling behind them and they realized they were in the way. Grimacing, sensing that there was no way that they could get out of the way, they prepared for the impact. But it never came. A black and orange figure leapt over their eyes and landed in a crouch before them, sweat pouring from his body as heavy pants escaped his lips. Surging back to his feet, his cerulean eyes burned as he tightened his fists before he burst forward to catch the two, dust billowing behind him. Skidding to a stop, seeing what just happened, both Temari and Tenten had to blink. Then they looked at each other before the spot where they had just saw who they thought to be Uzumaki Naruto trailing after Guy and this unknown bodybuilder. Okay, now I'm interested. Hope Dad can forgive me for abandoning the shop today, but I've got to figure this out. Tenten looked rather surprised as she remembered Naruto since he was in her class for a short time. Temari nodded in response, looking rather contemplative at what she saw. It was obvious to see the difference between him now and what he had been little less than a week ago. However, what she nodded at was that he was either hiding his rather muscular build with that jacket of his or he was taking steroids, for his muscle growth was obvious. Not in a ridiculous overbuilt way, but they were definitely noticeable now. He looks pretty good like that, Temari stated, not caring what she had just said before she blinked and turned to Tenten, seeing the girl stare at her. What, didn't you see him? Without that jacket on he looks pretty good. He should just get rid of the gaudy thing and he would have a few girls wanting him. Twitching at his comment, Tenten refused to respond, for she knew Naruto. He wasn't very intelligent, and from what she remembered he was a goofball and an idiot, someone definitely not worth paying attention to. But now after seeing him like this, she just might have to reconsider her opinion of the blonde and put him in her dateable book. Without the jacket, of course, since Temari was dead on about it. Excuse us again, ladies, Goku commented, rushing by them again, this time running forward with a slight laugh in his voice. Yash, Guy yelled as he passed by them in a blur, trying to catch Goku without resorting to opening the gates in their race. I will beat you, or I will do 10 more laps on my hands. Believe it. Blinking at the statement, Temari and Tenten looked at each other for a moment. Then they fell onto their buttocks, laughing at how weird Guy sounded saying, believe it. When he first thought about training with Goku, the first thing Naruto thought of was learning some super cool technique and some physical training to get faster. Sure, he thought it was going to be tough, but this was insanity. Refraining from a Sparta joke, Naruto panted as he looked over at Goku to see he had not even broken a sweat. Even with his races against Guy, going through their movement drills between these dummies and then cutting down trees with an axe he had gotten last night, he had not had a single drop of sweat fall from his body. And then to top that off, Goku had told him that all of this would become his morning workout routine soon enough. Naruto was sure his sanity was going to be tested before this was over with. Despite this, it wasn't even 3 in the afternoon yet. That much surprised Naruto. It really did, for he was sure it should have been getting close to night time, but the sundial, that was conveniently located near the training dummies, had yet to reach 3 so. Damn, he was somewhat surprised by himself. Then again considering they started at 4 in damn morning. Naruto. Goku spoke as they finished with their training for the day, sitting on top of a wooden training dummy, the very same that Naruto had been tied to in his genin test with Kakashi. I've got something to tell you. It is about our training. Hearing this, Naruto almost wanted to groan. He was almost too tired to do anything more but was willing to do so if he got a break. Good, but can we go get something to eat first? Or could you tell me while we eat? I'm drawing on fumes right now. I would but I might get distracted and forget again so no. Goku sheepishly admitted he had forgotten to do so in the morning for he had invaded the first restaurant that had opened and that caused his lapse in memory till just now, after a phone call from King Kai. Chuckling at Naruto's groan, both from his exhaustion and at his memory, Goku became rather serious for this talk required him to be such. Naruto, I would like to teach you in my arts for you have far surpassed any expectations I had. But there is a catch. While exhausted, Naruto almost summoned the energy to jump up and pump his fist into the air with a yata. However, due to his exhaustion he was able to listen to Goku's entire statement and he almost wanted to groan. He should have expected something like this. However, before anything else could be said, his eyes widened as yellow energy pulsed in Goku's palm before he pointed his hand to a nearby tree. With a small grunt, the ball of energy fired from palm and into the tree. The ensuing explosion ripped through all the trees within a 5-meter radius, the wood and leaves being incinerated on contact from the expanding explosion of raw energy. What was left after the smoke settled was a meter-deep crater where the tree and those around it were incinerated from the blast. That is what is known as a regular Kai blast. Goku explained as he turned back to Naruto to go over the principle of Kai. Kai is the life force of every living being. Everyone has it and can even use it but most don't even know about it. Even you possess Kai, it is just restricted in its current state. Naruto's jaw nearly came unhinged at what he saw. This man, his newest sensei, had just obliterated all those trees with what seemed to be little effort. Turning to Goku, his eyes widened for a moment before they began to gleam with anticipation. Cool, can you teach me that? Goku couldn't help but to laugh a little at Naruto's enthusiasm and innocence. Just how much Naruto reminded himself and his son, Gohan, was rather funny. Putting that aside and containing his laughter, Goku took a deep breath and shook his head. I can, but that's where the catch comes in. In order to learn how to use Kai, you must go through an unsealing to release it first. You must break the spiritual bond that holds it back. But there are risks in doing this. Seeing he had Naruto's full attention, Goku made sure he remembered everything King Kai told him before speaking. There is a high chance that this process will fail and horribly cripple you chakra coils, igniting them as your spiritual energy attempts to leave your body and causing severe damage to your body. It is a painful process and from what I know it could get to the point that the pain is so unbearable that you can't take it anymore. And die. Naruto's eyes widened at the thought that there was a chance that he could die just to learn such a technique. And to make matters worse, it wasn't Goku was finished yet. And there is another thing. By releasing Kai from your spiritual energy you will no longer be able to use any of your techniques any longer for you would no longer have any chakra. Naruto froze. To hear that not only was there a chance that he could die, a low one but a chance nonetheless, that he would lose a chance to learn techniques that he could possibly learn in the future. Obviously right now that wasn't a problem since he only knew shadow clones and… Okay, maybe there was something to this Kai thing. Either that or he was going to bust Kakashi in the lip. How dare he let him possess only one known technique and throw head first into these exams. He completely ignored the fact that he was the one that went head first into them. However, Goku caught Naruto's attention once more as he went to point out the benefits. If it succeeds you will be far stronger than you are right now by at least 3 times. You will also be able to learn everything I can teach you about Kai Plus since it is so malleable you can even create your own techniques without much trouble. This caught Naruto's attention in a heartbeat. He would become at least 3 times stronger than he was now. But what would that mean? All his hard work and effort up to this point was for nothing. So what you are saying is that I would become much stronger. And I wouldn't have had to work for it? Hearing this, Goku frowned and noted the tone of voice. It sounded as if Naruto was upset at hearing this but quickly deciphered the reason why. By all means you have already earned it. The only reason you will be getting stronger is because you already possess it, it will just be released. Your chakra while allowing you to use techniques costs you the power you could have. To further explain how you would become stronger. Chakra is made of two energies, spiritual and Kai. This driving force is Kai while the spirit simply guides it, forcing it to stay within boundaries. Now if you were to take away that spirit energy and let it run freely, you would become more powerful. You would lose the finesse that chakra gives but end up with the raw speed and power of Kai grants. Goku added onto his statement to try and help Naruto understand. Naruto was rather stunned. Chakra made him weaker? But from everything he knew, chakra was what made them stronger. From the way Goku explained it, however, he could become stronger without it. And with what little he knew of chakra to begin with, it was a debate of a lifetime for Naruto. To become far more powerful than he could ever be but lose his techniques and or something even worse, or to stay the way he was now, hoping to gain strength on his own with his chakra and physical strength. Just to let you know, no matter what I will train you. If you don't want to go through the unsealing, that's fine. I can still teach you enough about martial arts and make you stronger, you will just not be able to learn any techniques from me. And you don't have to decide now, but when you make your decision come and tell me. Goku pitched in, completely spacing that part of the deal. The young blonde couldn't help but sigh in relief. That made him feel a little better to know that he could still learn from him. And while he didn't like the idea of not learning techniques, so far he could see Goku's training had its merits and would make him much stronger. He already felt stronger. Now I do believe it is well past lunchtime and I'm starving. Goku announced just before his stomach roared in anticipation. And afterwards I'll take you to a store I was directed towards to get some weights and better training clothes. Huh? I like my clothes. Naruto commented at the last remark, noticing he didn't have his jacket for the first time today and then seeing their condition. But, yeah, I see your point. And for some reason they feel a little more snug than normal. Goku nodded in agreement, noting the wear and tear they had. He also noted that Naruto's chakra seemed more and more unstable and he was beginning to wonder about this. He remembered something about being affected by a seal from this Orochi. Orochi something guy, and he had lost the control he had over his chakra. Wait, could it be that it accidentally unstabilized it and his Kai is leaking out of from the pressure the spiritual energy places on it? Goku wondered, as that would explain why Naruto seemed a little more defined than what he had been days before. Frowning, unsure of what was going on and planning on getting someone to help him, Goku put it off for now. After all, for right now it wasn't hurting anything. Sighing, for she was now on her own, looking after the shop, Tenten sighed. Why did her father have to hunt her down every time she got distracted from her chores and then get stuck with watching over the shop? Shaking her head, she ran the broom over the welcoming carpet in front of the store to dust it off a little. Everything was going rather slow today, mostly because it was the month before the Chunin exams. The only people coming in were Junin to get a specialty weapon, something her mother did well, or academy students and young genin wanting shuriken and kunai to practice with to become like those competing in the exams. And at that very moment she had 3 very annoying academy students bothering her. Hey miss, for the last time, no. We do not sell swords, say, or anything else of that sort to academy students except for kunai and shuriken. Tenten rolled her eyes, for it was the 12th time Konohamaru had asked that question. Ah, why not? I want to get a sword so I can work on my own path just like the boss. Konohamaru responded, for while he wanted to be like Naruto, knew better than to emulate his older friend, knowing that doing so would just make them two alike and that would give him the advantage in the long run since he was older and had been training for a longer time. Also, the boss has that freaky stamina and just doesn't give up no matter what. Konohamaru noted from what he heard of Naruto's stories, he did not give up and seemed to keep going when no one else could. Tenten sighed for what felt the 100th time before she turned to Konohamaru and lightly smacked him across the head with the broom handle. Because we have a policy to not sell advanced weaponry to those that cannot handle it. We hardly sell swords to genin, much less an academy student. It is a chunin grade weapon and is often not sold to those that don't know how to wield one. Ow! Konohamaru rubbed the top of his head and glared at Tenten for a moment before groaning. Oh man, and here I was hoping I could get something so I could distinguish myself from the boss. Ah, don't worry Kono-kun. Moegi commented as along with Udon joined up with the grandson of the third Hokage, smiling softly to try and cheer him up. I'm sure you will find something that you can wow Naruto. Hearing the subject of her fascination, for now at least, be mentioned, Tenten suddenly took an interest in the small boy. Wait, are you saying Uzumaki Naruto is your boss? The dead last of the last graduating class? Yeah, Konohamaru proudly admitted before frowning at the clear belittlement his idol. And don't you underestimate him like everyone else does. The boss is far tougher than you can imagine. Figuring this kid might know something, Tenten was going to play along with this little charade to see what she could learn. It might not be much, but it could help figure out what caused this sudden change in the blonde. Oh, is that so? I heard he barely got by Inuzuka Kiba because he farted in his face. My teammate mentioned it was on sheer luck that he won that bout. Well, yeah, that fart was an accident. He was trying something else. Konohamaru sheepishly admitted, for he heard Naruto brag about it after running into him after the elder boy ditched Ebisu. But in all fairness, the boss was still suffering from the forest and what the snake guy did to him. Tenten's entire body froze at the mention of snake guy. Oh, she knew all too well there was only one snake guy, and that was Orochimaru of the Sannin. And from what she heard, there had been an intrusion by a powerful enemy, but she didn't think it was that powerful of an intruder since the exams were not stopped. That could also explain some of the sudden changes she had noticed from the blonde in the short time span. It was well known Orochimaru was thrown out for his inhumane experiments, and it could have very well been that he did something to Naruto. But then why wasn't he under watch? Snapping out of her thought process, hearing bell that signified someone just entered the shop, Tenten turned her attention to greet their customer. Welcome to Hitomi's weapon shop? May I help, boss? Konohamaru yelled out, seeing Naruto enter the shop trailing after a rather formidable looking man. Here to get a weapon to kick butt, right? Man, I wish I could get one of those swords. They're awesome. Grinning like an idiot, like he normally did when Konohamaru was around. And when he wasn't really, Naruto nodded in agreement. Yeah, some of the blades are kick-ass. But that isn't why I'm here. I came here for some weights for training. Training weights? Let's see. Tenten spoke before snapping her fingers as if it was the most obvious thing. While we're running kind of low on them right now, Mother can have some ready for you by tomorrow. If you want weighted clothing, that will take a few extra days since Dad is already working on a rather heavy order, but they will be top-notch in quality and they also double as armor. Weighted clothing just like the ones I ordered last night, but at half the weight and for someone his size. I would also light a pair of 5-kilo weights for each limb until they are ready, however. Goku immediately stated, catching Tenten off guard before her eyes widened. This was the guy that ordered to have 100 kilos of weighted clothing, and he was ordering the same thing for Naruto. Either it was going to make Naruto extraordinarily faster or he would be crushed from the weight. Lee only wore 30 to 40 kilo weights on his leg, while Guy had the same on each limb. Breaking out of her shock, she took a look at Naruto for a moment before heading to the counter and pulling out a tape measure. Alright then, let me take your measurements. To be honest, Tenten kind of wanted to take his measurements now, seeing him up close. She swore he wasn't this built during the prelims, but once again there was that horrendous orange jacket he wore, and that very well could have hid such muscle development. Hold out your arms, please. Okay, Naruto said while holding his arms out, unsure what this had to do with getting clothes since he normally just tried what fit and got that. That could also explain why he picked out his jumpsuit, for even he admitted it wasn't the best looking thing out there. He really wanted that black and orange one, but it was just a little too big for him. Holding out the measuring tape to his arms, marking down the numbers down before nodding. Alright, with this Dad should be able to get your weighted clothes once he finishes with your sensei's order. It will take a little time due to the amount of weight since he has to equally distribute it throughout the clothing. Until then, can I offer you some of our pre-made weights to prepare you for the clothing? And it seems that you need some new clothes at that too. Tenten pitched to them like how she was taught before she sweat dropped, just realizing the shape of Naruto's clothing. Sure, have anything that's orange? Naruto nodded to both parts, figuring he would need the weights and the clothing for training. Tenten would have commented on his strange color choice, at least for a ninja, but decided to shrug it off. She had seen plenty of colors that ninjas shouldn't wear but still did, so she figured it was just confidence in their abilities. So picking up a few of the 10-pound weights for the arms and legs, she went through the clothing before deciding on a few GI. Naruto looked at her in a questioning manner as she handed them to him before she shook her head. If you're getting the same order of weighted clothes as he is, it's best to have a GI so you'll be able to take off the shirt easier when you need lighten the load. Oh, yeah, good thinking. Naruto looked genuinely thankful, for he didn't think about something like that before, not realizing that he would be getting a weighted shirt. That would have made it tough to wear a jacket over it and then get the thing off. Unlike Fuzzy Brows and Fuzzy Brows Sr., he wouldn't be able to just reach down to his legs and unstrap their leg weights. Of course Lee still needed time, but still. He was fast enough to get some distance to get them off. Naruto wasn't so sure he was that fast yet. Seeing that Tenten showed him the dressing room, Naruto disappeared into it. And as soon as he did, there were 3 certain kids buzzing but the excitement. Oh man, the boss is going to look so cool when he comes out. He seems a little taller than before. Udon added with a curious look on his face, not sure how someone could grow an inch or 2 in such a short time span. Also, he seems a little more muscular and something else, but I'm not sure what. Oh son of, these are heavy. Naruto groaned from the other side, apparently trying on the weights that Tenten had given him. Tenten couldn't help but snicker. If he wasn't even used to those, how was he going to deal with 50 kilos of weight on his entire body, for each weight will be twice as heavy? She couldn't help but grin. It was easy to see that Neji would beat him in the first. And then Naruto came out of the dressing booth, seemingly not struggling with the weights as he messed with his hair. Having an orange GI much like the one Goku was wearing now, he had taken off his black t-shirt, allowing them a decent look at his chest. Just like his arms, his chest had puffed out a tad with the increased muscle mass. Cool, Konohamaru stated, impressed at how much stronger Naruto looked in this new outfit. You should think about going with that look, boss. It makes you look more intimidating showing off your muscles like that. Udon nodded in agreement, for Naruto seemed more muscular than a lot of others he had seen, but not overly built like those freaks on bodybuilding magazines. It was a much better build overall, at least for a ninja anyways. He doubted some ninjas could beat those guys arm wrestling, or even at wrestling at that. Oh my god, Tenten couldn't even believe how Naruto looked now that he came out. And also seeing him stretch a little and rather freely with those weights on surprised her after hearing his comment. Despite complaining about their weight, he was easily moving with them on. If that was any indication of his physical prowess, he could give Neji a problem in his first match. But her main concern was the same thing she had earlier in the morning when she noted him pass by her and Tamari. It was as the Wind Maiden had said. He looked hot, Moegi said, with stars replacing her normal eyes while gazing at Naruto. Tenten released the breath she was holding in relief, while both Konohamaru and Udon looked at their female counterpart with a deadpan expression. The younger girl stated the obvious so she wouldn't be the one to do so. It would have looked bad for her since, well, they were almost the same age and she didn't want to give anyone the wrong impression. Besides, she liked Neji. Even if he was a douche to practically everyone he met and only tolerated her and Guy Sensei. That looks good on you, Tenten admitted to Naruto, slightly surprised, for she wasn't expecting him to look the way he did, and agreed wholeheartedly with Moegi's statement. He was hot. Well now, is my Ten-chan daydreaming again? A feminine voice caught everyone's attention and had Tenten jumping up and clutching her chest in shock. Mom, Tenten screeched at her mother, who just smiled at her innocently, making those that didn't catch the reference, which was everyone but Tenten. Shaking her head at her daughter, the elder Hitomi woman gazed over at Goku with a slight frown for a moment before nodding. I guess I will be forwarding this to the Hokage, I should assume? Yeah, if I was back home I would have money to pay for this, but… Goku sheepishly admitted while scratching the back of his neck. It's fine. The elder Hitomi shook her head, knowing Goku's circumstances since she and her husband were of the ninjas that quickly arrived to his crash site. Tenten, do you have his measurements? Yes. Her daughter responded for a moment, giving her mother a questioning glare before realizing what she meant and handed a clipboard over to her. He wants the weight to be half of the one that Dad's currently doing. Hitomi's eyes shot up at this, and after a quick and daggered glance towards the alien visitor, she couldn't help but frown. I see. Take this to your father, I'll watch over the shop for now. Not going to question her mother, for she was often said to give orders like these to her dad, Tenten took the clipboard back and went into the back. Meanwhile, the elder Hitomi glanced over at Naruto, who was being pestered by the 3 kids, before turning back to Goku. I don't know what you're planning. But it better work. Huh? Goku blinked, unsure what she had meant by that. Sighing and shaking her head, Hitomi glanced over at Naruto, who seemed to be telling a story of his day, making it sound much more epic than it probably was in the process. Just tell me one thing. You've sensed it, right? The first thing that popped into Goku's head at hearing this was about the fox demon, however he put that off. From the way she spoke, it did not seem like that was what she was talking about. This left him wondering for a moment before he mentally snapped his fingers. Yes. Simply nodding, Hitomi turned her gaze from Naruto's storytelling and gazed straight into Goku's eyes. Good. I don't know what your training plan is or what, but be certain that he will be able to take whatever you can dish out to him. Just make sure he's able to keep his word. That Hyuga needs to be taken down a few pegs. Hitomi shook her head, remembering what she had been told of what happened in the prelims. Now if you'd excuse me, I still have work that needs to be done. Sure thing. Goku waved at her before calling out to Naruto. Come on, we still got some daylight left to train, so let's get out of here. Oh man, Konohamaru groaned, wanting to hang out with his idol before a brilliant idea came to him. Can we watch, boss? However, that was shot down by Naruto, who shook his head at the youngest Sarutobi. Sorry, but no. I want to keep my training under wraps so that it will come to a complete surprise for Neji when we fight in the finals. Twitching as he remembered the reason he was training in the first place, Naruto's eyes narrowed and his fists clenched. He remembered what Neji had done to Hinata, and he swore to himself that he would make him pay for that. He never failed to deliver a promise. Sensei, let's go, Naruto stated, moving to the door before waving a quick goodbye to Konohamaru and the gang. And as soon as he left, Konohamaru almost looked giddy. Oh man, this is going to be awesome. The boss is going to wipe the floor with that guy. I hope so. Hitomi laughed lightly at the young boy and his companions jumping around excitedly before shaking her head. Little did she know Tenten had caught what her mother had said as she had just entered the room at that moment. Frowning, wondering what her mother had against Neji, Tenten shook her head and sighed. Well, whatever it was, it didn't matter. Neji was the best. He would win whether her mother wanted him to or not. That was for sure. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.